Hello, 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 hello. I'm with Tay again, and we're just hanging out. So whoever wants to watch, why not?
Yeah. What have you been like looking into recently?
Well, I've been reading the book, The History of Materialism, or rather rereading it, because the first time I read it, it's more like I don't know. But I guess now that I'm reading it, I have a good baseline because I'm trying to understand the nature of uh, philosophy of materialism, which is dependent on mathematics, emptying I guess fundamental presences, because that's what it's mainly about. It's like you get these fundamental presences within space, and then you quantify them mathematically, and those constellate to give you a materialist framework. At least that's how I think his name is Lange, Frederick Lange. I don't remember his middle name. That's how he puts it throughout the work. But aside from that, it's more like just trying to like get the psychology of materialism, because I feel like the whole atheism, theism, pantheism, all these different debates come down to people not knowing how to like make transparent their what I call their consciousness is situational device. Because there's a way in which your consciousness is set within how you are set as, to be as a person, where you have different temperaments that are oriented towards different domains of being human. Some are more emotionally in touch and sensually in touch externally. Some are more physiologically in touch and cognitively in touch. So it's just like there are different circuits, there are different domains that make us up and make up the world that we're all sensitized to like take in and interpret and keep to and find some sort of like pleasure, pain, ignoring, attraction, repulsion, numbness, animation, all these different states of being concerning. And I'm trying to figure these things out because I'm noticing these things as I'm looking at myself and noticing that some people like and then like I guess how you're situated leads to you conceiving of the world in a different way. For instance, let me give you an example. I know I'm talking too long. I'll let you talk, but
No, no.
okay.
I like listening.
Okay. There's a like take with knowledge, right? You come into this world and your senses are developing, and then you take in sensory information and your mind is developing. So maybe you'll get imagination, you'll have thought processes, you'll feel emotions and stuff. But then you'll try to figure out how do these constellate to create a sense of coherence, a sense of intelligibility, which is connection all the way through, or certain regularities, traditions of this is what happens with this happens when this happens, and so on. Stylizations of time, stylizations of presence, stylizations of space, stylizations of like, you know, engagement and context, and all these different things give you a sense of reality. So I have the sense of like when you look at the history of philosophy, there's a sense of some people will start from the base sensibility of like, this is what I get with my senses, or this is what I feel with this is where my consciousness is situated to experience things. But then they're like, well, I can't get at the actual object because I only get the object of experience through me. So maybe what's actually relevant is the sensations I'm getting. So that means my sensations are what are most fundamental. This people take it even further and they're like, actually, what's most fundamental is consciousness, because all sensation happens for consciousness. In the absence of consciousness, there's no registering of sensation. And the absence of sensation, there's no registering of the external world. So it's like you can see how like people kind of fragment and like make fundamental these different domains that make you up, from consciousness being situated in sensation to the object that experiences the world. You see how like people are like selecting, some people are like, the world is more real, only everything is just this presence. Other people will say, no, sensation is more real because it's like what you feel, what you experience, what's generated to your consciousness. Other people say, no, obviously consciousness is more real because you can't have a sensation or an experience without consciousness. So you see how like the history of philosophy is of people debating these different things and reducing the world to one main way of being. And I personally think like it's all of these at once.
Right.
So
Mm. Yeah, it's difficult because for people who don't experience like a certain plane of existence, like consciousness, let's say,
yeah,
people don't experience spiritual stuff.
yeah.
So how would they quantify it or like find importance in that plane when like the immediate is like experiential and material?
Yeah.
That's the only thing they can experience. So like
Yeah.
understandably they falsely equate that to importance,
Yeah.
you know?
Actually, it's interesting that you say importance, because that's the key. That's the key to these things, is because there's a way in which quantity is also quality.
Yeah.
And quality gives a sense of importance. Importance has a sense of like, it presences, it stays with you. It feels like it draws your attention to it.
Yeah.
And it keeps to you. And it has a particular flavor, whether the flavor is one that's pleasant, comfortable, uncomfortable, one that attracts you to it to want to fixate on it or keep it permanent, or one that makes you repulsed, makes you want to pull away from it and stuff. So there's this feature of evaluation with every single thing that you're engaging with. And with this comes, you can say you get a collection of these importance, like you could say, I think it was, what's his name, Protagoras? I think it was Protagoras, Greek pre-Socratic philosopher, who said man's a measure of all things, which another way of saying man is an evaluative creature. We evaluate, we judge things, and evaluations have this sense of preference. I like this, I don't like this. I want to be close to this, I want to be far away from this. I want to, and even utility has a sense of like meta value before utility, because it's like, why would you value utility? You know, it's just like, oh, it's useful. Well, why would you value it being useful? Just because there's a sense of like, you prefer utility. And you prefer utility because there's a sense of you prefer function. You want things to work a certain way, and you prefer certain end states from the ways things work. So it just keeps things interesting. I know it's a lot to process. I said a lot.
You think really fast.
Sorry.
I want to think like that.
Hey, you can. I like the way you think too. Like yours is more fluid, and you also become very expansive, and you're just like.
It's also like I'm like booting up from like a brain dead day too. Working all day.
Right.
And my coworker that's supposed to replace me for my shift change didn't come. He was supposed to come at 12.
Yeah.
And I get off at like 1:30. By 1:30, he's still not there. I was like, what's going on?
Right.
Apparently he called out that day.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. But anyways, I was because the video series you sent me on like Hegel.
Yeah, Kant and Spinoza.
Yeah, I was trying to like figure that one out. And I realized that like because you were trying to basically like understand how people think from a certain perspective, right?
Yeah.
You were trying to understand like, I guess I don't know, like I guess their perspective is like a simplified divinity or whatever in Christianity. I don't know what it's called, but it leads to New Ageism.
Yeah, it can imply that. It can take you there. Yeah.
But like it started out from Christian roots, you know.
Some of it, yeah. I mean, the history of philosophy in many cultures is very interesting, how thoughts progress.
Right.
Or how people, or even you can say the history of philosophy is a history of experience and interpretation of experience. And then even the history of error, like misunderstandings, misinterpretations, or the history of selection, ignoring certain things and taking certain things, or being blind to certain things. And then as this progresses, like that's why I like Hegel's idea of sublation, the sense of whenever you're progressing through an understanding, there's certain things you negate, you take certain things away. There's certain things that you preserve, you keep with you. And then there's certain things that you enhance, you lift up, you raise it. So you see that throughout different processes and stuff. And some people try to stylize this process, like Hegel tries to make it linear, where it's like it's progressing. Like you see all these different ideas progressing into each other till it culminates in him understanding pretty much everything. Well, not everything, but he feels like he was the end of philosophy. That's kind of how he concluded about himself.
Wait, what?
Exactly.
He's like, I'm great.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you can see how he thought that too.
Yeah,
it's like when you see the progression. And what's funny is like Nietzsche thought the same thing about himself, because Nietzsche was very honest. Nietzsche was like every philosopher's love of wisdom is basically the love of their wisdom. that was more honest. And he was like, I think in Ecce Homo, he was like, they'll change from BCE before Christ to before after Nietzsche or something. That's what he said about himself. I'm not sure what he was joking about, but that's what he said. Ecce Homo.
And Peterson says something about that, like about like people with like high erudition.
Yeah.
Like, they have this sense of, because like I used to be like, I'm really smart, but then like the world humbled me. I'm like, like no one's there to humble them because they can talk their way out of anything. You know.
And there's that feature there.
Yeah.
There's a sense of people feel like they can cultivate a more refined understanding, or like even I have that sense where I'm just like, I feel like I'm able to build off of other people and take so many different approaches.
Yeah.
To the point that I'll notice things like rather I pay attention to what I don't notice too. Like if I'm noticing this, like I'm looking here, I'm not paying attention to what's behind me, so I look behind.
Right.
So stuff like that. I'm always like keeping track of things like that. So I'm able to like dimension things out in ways that people wouldn't usually think of.
Right.
Because for me, what's absent is just as important as what's present. So it makes me more, it makes me feel more, I guess, comprehensive.
Right.
And even in politics, like I was telling my sister how like the reason why it's difficult for me to figure out my political position, so to speak, is because I don't think in terms of positions, I think in terms of a space that position.
Yeah, I can't fit you in a box. Like that's human, so you shouldn't be able to fit them in like a left or right box.
Yeah.
Like they're and yeah, like you definitely like try to account for multiple positions.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyways. Yeah, I don't know what Hegel's talking about, man.
I mean, there's a series by Chad Haig and also Gregory B. Sadler, where he reads the phenomenology of spirit and he goes comments through it paragraph by paragraph. Those are good series. Those explain things very well, and they helped me out. I was like, I wish I watched these before I read the book, because when I first read the book, I was like, okay, I understand this because it's like my mind can go through the process, but some of it was also like, because Hegel's thinking is very notional in the sense of like he's able to like put abstractions into words, and most people don't think in abstractions; they think in terms of images. So it makes it hard for you to grasp them, because it's like you have to go through the mental process, and then you be able to meta and look at the mental process, and then you take that mental process as like you hold it as a memory, and then you develop it further. So that's what he's doing throughout. This is one way to interpret what Hegel's doing. And since most people's minds don't work that way, it's like, fuck you talking about what?
Right.
Like it's coming in words, and it's just like, and then the words are like the irony, like in German, Hegel is ironic in that he speaks so precisely it's hard to understand him. In the sense of like
it's too much detail.
Yeah, it's not just too much detail, but it's just like he's so like he picks a precise word to talk about what he's talking about. And most people's thinking is not precise. We're kind of like you could say we're all poets in how we think. And with occasional bouts of like formalism through logic, through like linearly tracing out or inducing or figuring out how a part fits with the whole, or figuring out oppositions, or figuring out like things containing certain things, or figuring out synergies, or figuring out mosaics, like things aggregating to a big picture, like all these different ways in which we render things. And so, like, even though that's one of my disagreements with Hegel, in that he didn't capture all the different, you could say, cognitive processes we could have towards thinking, towards understanding. He just selected a few that helped him concentrate and get a through line, get a plot to like be able to like render his sense of like this is what makes things easy to understand. So yeah. And it's very interesting, because it's like because that's one thing that I really want to do. Like I'm very interested in the psychology of philosophy, because we're always doing philosophy. Like everyone at the end of their life, as soon as you start sharing wisdom or start talking about what you believe, what you think, or judging things, you're doing philosophy. We can't help but do philosophy. The only difference is like professional philosophy is just kind of like it's formalized and to become methodological, or it becomes like a type of literature. And stuff. But aside from that, we can't help but do philosophy, because we need wisdom to live. And wisdom is basically just instructions and judgments and preferences and all these different things and stuff.
Okay, so help me understand, like, so Spinoza, he was talking about how he's basically talking about pantheism.
Yeah, he's
but not really. He's talking about panentheism, right?
No, he's more of a pantheist, if you want to put him that way. Like, because he said God and nature are one.
Okay.
Because he used the schema of substance. Substance is sort of like the foundation. Under, standing. So standing under. And so it's like the foundation, the base, the most fundamental. So the most fundamental is the natural processes. And it's like you can think of it as like okay, let me back up. Let me go to Parmenides, pre-Socratic philosopher. Oh, actually, let me back up. Let me go to I'll be able to contrast this. It makes more sense if I explain these two together. Democritus, who gave us the idea of like an atom, which is something that's indivisible, like the smallest. If you keep chopping things down, you keep getting something that you can't break down. Parmenides came up with the idea of the one. And the one, as you can say, is something that's so big, you can't cut it from anywhere, because everything you try to cut it with is inside of it.
Okay.
It's kind of like you can't use a knife to cut it, because what makes a knife is like, you can't use use a knife to cut what makes a knife a knife. So Spinoza, he kind of took like this sounds schematizing me, but he made the Parmenidean take of like, this is the one, but the one is all, this sense of like everything is nature.
Right.
And the underlying substance is nature. And this underlying substance, this foundation is God. It's the most fundamental, it's a basic, the God, the power. I don't remember the etymology of theo in Greek is. I do know like God typically translates like the power or the principle. So the underlying power, the underlying principle is one. It's unitary. It's a monism. It's not a plurality. It's not a dualism. It's just one. Then from this substance comes two attributes or properties. And he borrowed these properties from Descartes. Descartes came up with the whole mind-body dualism, but he also put it in terms of like with like the body of the world as sort of like extension, like something extending in space. It's like this presence that has like magnitude, size. And then he also had a mind of like whatever mind is. So he said these are the dual attributes. So Spinoza says these two attributes are what express the characteristic of the substance of nature. Mind, you can say mind and matter, or mind and extension. And then from this comes different modes or different fashions, different variations. It's sort of like you take a I can't think of a substance in real life to like illustrate this, because it's like if I think of an ocean or sand, or it's like if you take clay or something, you take the clay, the substance, but then you make like a statue, and then you dye and you color it. So the coloring is like the mode, and then the shape that you make it into is like the attributes, the property, but the substance is the actual clay. So that's kind of what Spinoza's doing. So he kind of simplifies it and compacts it all, but at the same time he says the attributes, the characteristics are infinite. So I don't know how he concludes that. After we read his ethics, I have a book that kind of breaks that well down, which I haven't read yet. I haven't read his ethics in a long time. But anyway, so that's Spinoza. He kind of like makes everything, he creates like a smoothness of monism. And then, so yeah, that's what's going on with him.
And the next person to try to like
Kant,
right?
Yeah. And Kant basically kind of put it as remember how I said like we experience the world, right? But we can't experience the world we can only experience the world how we are.
Yeah.
So Kant said there's a way in which the world is on its own without us, and we can never get to that.
Right.
So as a result, Kant alienated us from being able to have direct contact with the nature of what is.
And he tries to like ratify that by saying you use rational faith.
Yeah, something like
like there's this other world you can't access, but the consequences are clear or something. So you have to have faith in that. I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah. But then, okay, so
I guess what he did was he created a way to. It's almost as if he made it like he almost made the he didn't actually say it, but his argument was almost like, well, you can't prove that God doesn't exist. No,
right.
He's just like, because we can't even know if God is or isn't. So it's just like, well, you may as well just let it be.
Right.
So this like because he said he had to limit what was the quote? I said, did he say he had to limit knowledge for the sake of faith or something?
Yes.
So he tried to figure out the limits of knowledge, the limits of rationality, the limits of like understanding. And some of these things are based on the fact that some of it even goes back to Descartes, even before Spinoza, that rationality becomes the foundation, the basis, just the mere ability to think becomes like the ground of knowing things, which is different from Orthodox Christianity, which says like, no, it's faith, and the faith leads you to communion, relationship, and you're in relationship to God. You're the point of your rationality, the point of your thinking is orient you towards others. It's not to become a self-referencing loop. Like Descartes, I think, therefore I am. A Christian would be like, no, God is the I am. You think towards God. Yeah, you think because of him. So that's the difference with how like see how.
And it's interesting because like didn't all this start because of basically Christianity, like Descartes trying to like rationalize Christian ideas.
Yeah.
In his time, like rationalism is the big new craze.
Yeah,
and
like
they don't want to eliminate that from figuring out faith. Yeah,
in a sense, yeah. It was very difficult because it's like there's a process of knowledge, right? There's a process where we try to understand the world so we can interface with it and manipulate it and use and do things with it. Like, and even with the whole rationalism is very much tied to mysticism throughout history. Like Descartes came up with I think he had a dream where he was like, something told him that from now on you will think in terms of weights and mass and volume, like these different properties that you get in physics. So he started thinking those things to interpret the world, like the measurable world, the quantitative world, stuff of the senses, and using things to contract with each other. So he got that from a dream. So it's just like, that's not a rational process, quote unquote. So it's just like there's a way in which people get inspired by things, or even when people have insights, so it feels almost like it comes from out of nowhere, or like you've had some sort of revelation. So there's this weird interfacing of rationalism, mysticism, and materialism, and it's just interesting because I feel like we haven't laid out what these are from what's mathematical, what's the nature of mathematics. Like even Nietzsche was skeptical of mathematics too. So it's just like they're like Nietzsche was like mathematics presumes that things are identical with themselves. But it's like you can presuppose counting, but counting presumes differentiation, but perhaps there's no differentiation. Perhaps that's or you can make infinite differentiations, so on. You can keep breaking things down infinitely. So it's just like there's never one thing that's completely compact as one thing. So it's just interesting, like when you get the different ways people can think about things and describe things, and that's what keeps philosophy so interesting. That's what keeps these things. Yeah.
Like, what was Descartes' goal though? Like, was it like
he wanted
try to strengthen?
He wanted certainty. He wanted to know, what can I know for sure.
Right.
Like you could say he was trying to bypass faith.
Right.
In some ways, you can say he was trying to like figure out what's the main thing I can know for sure. And I guess the main thing I can know for sure is that I am.
Right. Because like in the end, he's still like, by distilling it down to him, he's brought it back out to like the divine in some sense. Like he wanted to try to figure out God in a quantifiable way, right?
In a sense,
I think wasn't his goal like to try to basically like not use like faith, something that he can't perceive.
I mean, he ended up using it anyway, because he said like for instance, he did the experiment of like, what if there's a demon? Like, you ever heard like the brain in a jar? Like the sense of like, whoa, you can be a brain in a jar just getting electrical impulses. You're not actually experiencing any. There's nothing there. So he came up with the idea of like, what if there's a demon that's kind of like, it's very scientific. It's very INTP too, or the sense of like the Matrix or something, or I'm actually asleep and things are feeding to my brain a world, but the world's not actually there. So here, this idea was like, I guess I can trust that God is preserving the world and is allowing my mind to be, and that's how I can know things are real, because God does not lie. But he did a weird, there's a weird way the mind moved, like a lot of assumptions that he had to make. You could say, how do I put it? He tried to like reduce things down to what he can most found certainty in, and it was himself. But then to maintain that center, the peripheral that he compounded on it was like, no, how to put it? I can't think of an object, because like it's almost as if like he took things, he tried to center it on something, but what was peripheral to it, what was embedded in, was collapsed on it to make it trust itself, and then make it ripple out and trust it, the peripheral. It's a weird abstract image, but it's just like, it's kind of like I don't know how to like describe it. It's just that's just my idea of it, because it's just like I'm aware that there's something he's doing cognitively that's like, it's very interesting. So yeah.
So they were trying to like strengthen like the fellowship of, I guess, like religiosity or Christianity through rationalism. They were just trying to develop their own ideas.
In a sense, yeah. They're like at least with Descartes, he was after knowledge. I haven't studied him much, to be honest, because I haven't read a lot of philosophers. I've read the history of philosophy, like the history of like what this person thought, like Will Durant and Bertrand Russell. I've read them, and different people like that. And then certain separate things like Discourse on Method by Descartes. But it's just when you read those history of ideas, you kind of get a sense of how human thinking has progressed, and how certain things, sometimes people respond to each other, other times they point out what the other person is not paying attention to, or sometimes they try to go deeper into the person, or sometimes so it's just it's one of those things where
because I was trying to like I showed the video series to my dad, and he sent me the video about essence energy or something.
And that's a good distinction. On Orthodox Christianity, it's just like you can have God's activity, but you can't have is what he actually is in himself. He's a mystery, in the sense that what God is always beyond us, but you can know him by what he does. And that's true even in the Bible. Like God presents himself as a voice, or he presents himself as a theophany, like an expression in nature, like a burning bush, or a whirlwind, or a pillar of fire, or a cloud, or he gives you a vision, or he speaks to you in a dream, and stuff like that. or he sends an angel, whatever those are. I don't even know. But it's just interesting how like there's this sense of what is, I guess, outside the game or outside the book, writing themselves into the system in a way that lets you know that they are not the same nature of the regular, of they're not the tradition, they're not part of the tradition of what you're used to. They're or from a they're different, they're holy, so to speak, they're distinct.
That's essence energy.
Yeah, like the energy is that, you can say the energy is like that activity, that action, but the essence is sort of like who is God in himself, like how do you, can you actually comprehend that?
Right.
Because even though we're made in God's image, like that's the part that we can kind of get of like we kind of get parts of us that are like God. It's that likeness that allows that translation process. And likewise, we're also like the creation, we're like other creatures, and that likeness like allows people to be able to things to reflect off each other like mirrors and look through each other like windows and telescopes and microscopes, you know, to get a understanding.
Yeah. I think what I was thinking about. I was wrestling with these ideas, but like it's like hard for me to like sometimes like hold on to like what I discover, or like
that's why I gotta write it down.
Yeah.
You have a notepad or your phone, just jot things down.
Yeah, but like at the time, like it still feels like I'm working it out.
Ah, true.
So it didn't feel complete, or like, but like I guess like yeah, and then like it just hits me randomly, like, oh yeah, I was trying to figure that out.
Right.
Watch it again or whatever.
I mean, I write fragments down, especially since my thing is not as synthetic as it used to be. I'm not necessarily even analytical. I'm more exploded or diffused. Like when you ever seen an exploded diagram? Like take an object, like if we took a laptop and we broke it up and you got the keyboards and the different pieces and stuff on the inside, it's all exploded and you see it all together. That's how my mind feels like. So I'm not good at like coalescing into an object anymore, nor can I break it down anymore, because it's like I just receive it broken like that. And it's very annoying. So that's why I have to describe things in detail, because that's kind of how I am, and I can't create a through line. I can only lock onto something and then direct you to different things, and then hopefully you remember that these things are all together. They cluster together or something. It's very annoying. But it taught me a lot about the nature of mind, how we make sense, and at least how certain minds make sense, and there's different things going on. Yeah, for sure. But aside from these things, I've been thinking of making a video about my sense of morality and what I'm pushing for, because I keep trying to figure out what do I want to advocate, or because I'm by temperament inclined to be an activist of sorts, where I want to care for others, or like I recently finished Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, and also listened to Essential Sorts. Everyone check out Essential Salts. Yeah, I said it wrong. Essential Salts. Yeah, he does a good analysis of Nietzsche's work. I like his interpretations. He's really good. And there's also somebody else, For the Love of Nietzsche. She's good. She's on Spotify. But she usually interprets things. Sometimes she interprets things for women, you know, because like trying to understand Nietzsche's views on women and health and all these different things and stuff. It's very interesting stuff. But anyway, they help kind of like position my moral sense. And so I've been trying to I've been doing a moral reevaluation where there's a way in which I don't naturally, because there's also a way in which you kind of, if you want to help your time, you have to think like it to understand it, but also think against it, challenge it to find what's wrong, what's strong, what's weak, and also then think new ways to refresh it or add to it or improve it. It's kind of like sublation, basically, like I told you. There's that feature there for in time period. So that's what I'm usually doing. And with that process, like I was talking to one of my friends about how I really sometimes I really want to go back to my old videos and like talk about things better, because back when I first started, I couldn't talk as well because my mind was frozen, but I was still like doing it because I was like, I want to get rid of my perfectionism and get rid of the fact that I can't express things the way I want to. But my point is, in one of those videos, I talk about I'm every woman, and I was talking about an egalitarian society. But when I actually got more of my mind developing as I'm going along, I realized that I'm not goal-oriented towards egalitarianism, if you think of that as a value or an end state. Because I always found that like kind of silly, because it's like life works through asymmetry, and life works through, I believe in quality, not equality. Equality is a means to quality for me, which is like you get equal opportunity, so people will become qualitatively better in some ways, and you'll get a hierarchy as a result. That's just how things actually work. We even notice as kids, you're the funny kid, you're the funniest kid in class, or you're the smart kid, you're the smartest kid in class, or you're the most athletic kid, and so on. So it's just like for every single, we're judging creatures, or preferential creatures, or we organize things, and we don't all have the same, you can say, rank of order for evaluation of what we value. So some people will value like beauty, others will value strength or wealth, and so on. And you see how like people will use different metrics too. And then you also see how like people also apply different metrics or measurements and so on for things that they consider different in some ways. That's why sometimes people talk about people apply double standards to men and women. It's like, yeah, because they're two different things. You don't want to apply the same, like for instance, giving birth, you don't want to apply the same standard giving birth to a man and woman. So it's like just things like that where people kind of like morally throw out moral abstractions that they don't think about the reality of. And Nietzsche pointed that out, how like lots of ideas, especially in language, become common. Like there's a way in which communication by nature tends to be like you make it, it's every word tends to point to a commonality of certain states that you've had mentally or physically or experientially. And that's how you can understand things. So everything you can communicate is what's common, but the things that are most unique to you, you can't translate them to others. That's why there's certain things about you. It's like, I don't know how to put this to other people because this is actually what makes you unique.
Right.
But if you could translate it, then it'd be like just someone to share it with you. It's shared. It's common. So Nietzsche kind of hated that because he was kind of ambivalent about that because he wanted people who were exceptional. He wanted people who were unique. Anyway, my point is with that is, what's I going with that? Yeah, I lost it.
It's okay.
It's fragmented and then it disappeared as I was moving forward. Because I was saying that so I could like to go extend it, but then the previous thing it kind of fades away and I lost the previous thing I was trying to explain. Okay, my point is, so my evaluation has been changing. I think I can pick it up. I lost it, but I'll make it up anyway, and then I'll probably will come up. But like my evaluation is changing where I want quality people. I want, even in relationships, because it's like if you think about the game of reproduction, because one of the main base ways of keeping any human species, any human state going is that people, men and women, reproduce, and then they rear their children. But that game of reproduction invites certain rules and invites certain affordances and invites certain enjoyments and certain pains and so on. And like I've been listening to Zers. I think I sent you one of his video. What's his name? I forgot his name. Wow. I've been listening to him too. But he tends to talk about how like, which is very Christian. He talks about people don't get into relationships to care for each other, because that's what love is. Like you're like, I will care for you. I'm not getting into it because of how you make me feel, because you make me feel special or whatever. I'm going to it because I want to care about you and I want to make you your best and improve you. So I feel like that's my basis, that's my encouragement with people, where it's just like that's my advocacy of like, let's try to better each other, let's try to care for each other. And then you can also enjoy each other, of course. And like there's a parable that my middle school teacher told me that I used to tell my sister about it was a Chinese heaven where this man died and went to heaven. And he was like, okay, no, he died and he told God he wanted to go to hell. So he went to hell, and in hell there was like this big table, this big banquet, full of delicious food, amazing. But people were sitting down, they were dressed really nice, and they had these freakishly long chopsticks. And they tried to pick up the food and try to feed themselves, but it was just impossible because the chopsticks were too fucking long. So they got angry, and then they started fighting each other and messed up the dinner. It's like, damn, hell sucks. So then he decided, okay, hell kind of sucks. I can see why this is hell. So then he went to heaven, and in heaven, instead of trying to feed themselves, they're feeding each other. So I was like that parable.
So it's the same thing. It's just how you view it.
Yeah, it depends on how you saw it. And that's my moral sense too. Like that's one of the things I was trying to explain in my Define Alternates book, about how like there's a way in which all the properties, all the qualities that you associate with good and evil kind of participate in each other. Or sometimes there's a way in which like sometimes a bad is a particular configuration of good.
Yeah.
And sometimes a bad is an absence of certain goods and stuff like that. So there's a way in which, or sometimes an exaggeration of even a good, that's not suitable, that's not proportional. Like it's good to be full, but if you eat too much, your stomach explodes. Yeah. So it's just like there's different ways in which you can like think about what makes things unhealthy, what makes things weak, what makes things destructive. And sometimes, and even destruction in itself is not bad. Sometimes we destroy things to construct other things. Like if you're chopping wood, you have to cut away, you have to throw some parcels of wood. That's destruction.
Mhm.
But then you shape it up. Or even if you're carving something, you're getting rid of certain things, you're destroying, you're ruining, you're ruining the organic unity. You're analyzing even. Analysis is violent if you think about it. When you're analyzing an idea, you're being violent. You're cutting things away, you're throwing things away. So it's like the ways we talk about good and evil, it's a lot of it is dependent on the end state you're trying to achieve, and also how you start it, and then also the process that you're going through. So each of these sometimes can be coupled from each other, or they can, there's ways in which they can be evaluated as, I guess, not good. Like maybe you start good, but you end, but the process is bad, but the end is good. Or maybe you start bad, the process is bad, but the end is good. So it's just like there's these different ways that beginning, middle, and end can like be of different natures. And that's what you constantly have in life. And then there's ways in which if you loop it into a cycle of like growth and decay, and then if you turn it into a clock or something, and you have like clocks within the same space, like if you meet people, it's kind of like you'll meet somebody, maybe you meet somebody and they're decaying at a time. You'll meet somebody and they're growing at a time. So there's ways in which like these intercepting states creates a lot of irregularity. But irregularity as a, depending on what you're focusing on, maybe an aggregate like at large, like it's operational and it's constructing something like a body, like what the cells are doing in your body or your blood flow or your whatever. But depending on what you're zooming in on, there's a particular order to each individual person or each individual part. So there's just, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's just like it's hard for me to translate these processes, but it's just these things I try to know about life, where it's like you can look at it in detail or big picture or mesa, like in between detail and big. And it's just like your interpretation changes, and of it at least. And then even not just it, but even your interpretation, like the schemas, the ways in which you interpret it can change too. You might be like, sometimes I like when I mess it up. Like if you think of people who like things that are like sometimes like people who like cursing. It's like, oh, I know it's bad. That's what makes it interesting. So things like that. Really just like the ways in which sometimes it's not just the object, sometimes it's the sensation, sometimes not the sensation, sometimes it's the judgment, the consciousness, and it just keeps things interesting.
Mine's really blank.
It's all good.
Yeah, I've been trying to work on like faith and like trying to understand what that means.
Right.
Because like that's what I was going into like the Hegel video. Like, okay, so what are they trying to say about like God? Okay, so it's not really the God of the Bible.
Right.
It's like I really want to like, I guess like I'm approaching it in like a very rational way, which is kind of impossible. Like it's like you said, like the world is not just like you view it in like a certain structure.
Yeah.
It's like a combination.
Yeah.
A simulacrum of not simulacrum. Simultaneously, it's like every dimension at once.
Yeah. And they're moving.
Yeah.
They're changing.
And like I was trying to understand, like if you can't access like the spiritual realm, but like in Christianity, they almost put that as like the most important.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
because you live for it. That's what regulates things. That's what Nietzsche hated. Nietzsche hated Christianity because of that. He thought, he said Christianity was Platonism for the masses, because Platonism or Christianity has a sense of like there is something beyond what is present, what presents itself as appearances. There's like an invisible that actually coordinates the visible.
Right.
Like if you see the processes of the world going towards some end, and intent, it implies that there's an intention that's not inherent within the presences, that within the appearances, that's making it do what it does. And Nietzsche hated that because he kind of considered it redundant, like that's unnecessary. And you can't, and if you can't leverage it, or you can't manipulate it, or you can't constrain it, or you can't tease it out, or if it's ambiguous to interpret, why consider it? So it's a more of a conservative move.
But it's also like, I don't know why he concluded that like you can't conclude or tease out what this invisible force is dictating.
Well, he wouldn't. He said like it's like, why would you assume it? Just go with appearance, go with presence, go with the fact that things change, things are becoming. What's right in front of you, what you take in. Because he considered, what if you talk about the invisible? If you talk about something like a dimension, that it's kind of like It's almost like I'm in this house, right? There's no point in me talking about what's going on outside or what's going on in China. I'm not in China.
Right.
So I can't talk as if China's processes are running how I live my life in here.
Right.
So it's kind of irrelevant.
Because that's how he thinks that's how he thinks like the spiritual realm.
Yeah, that's kind of how it'd be like. I'm making it concrete, but of course he says like in this case, it's like there's no such thing as China. He wouldn't assume. He's like, there's no China. It's just you live in their house. This is all there is. And this is what I call a more and enough. These are the two tendencies of human intelligibility, where some people can keep to the object and they put the different evaluations, the different interpretations that we can have towards the object of experience within the actual object. While other people say, actually, these dimensions are tapping us not just to the object, but tapping us to something that's behind the object. If there is a behind, others will say actually tapping into what's behind us, even that we're not aware of, that's letting us engage the object. So it's just like you see how like different ways of like putting how we are towards things. And most of the time people don't make these things transparent to themselves, or they don't articulate it, but they'll talk about these things as if it's purely rational, or rather it's like a matter of pure logic, but it's not. It's actually, it's the beginning of knowledge, logic. You're just establishing, making a premise. Like you're saying, let this be, or this is like this. And then you say, if this is like this is what follows. Or if this is like this can't follow. Or if this is like this, sometimes this follows. And so on. And that's kind of how we tend to reason about things.
Right. You kind of get like why Nietzsche would think like it wouldn't be helpful to think about like something that's invisible.
Yeah.
That tries to, but like,
because it can easily lead to superstition.
Right.
And you might make up ideas of what this invisible is like. You know? Like that's what I was dealing with. Like I remember when I was in the hospital, this voice was tricking me and stuff. And I started suspecting, like, what if it's a demon? And also it was weird because it was like, it was predicting how people would act, and people would act that way. And it felt like sometimes people were playing along with it. But it was also kind of my mind to interpret it that way too, whether through speaking to me or through guiding how my mind was interpreting things. So I was just like, okay, assuming I went through different theories. I didn't say it explicitly, but I was going through. I was just like, okay, maybe if it's a demon, maybe these other people have demons too, or whatever, and they're working with each other behind the scenes to like give me a simulacrum for how I'm experiencing things. So it's like, and that's you've seen Death Note, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like we basically, my problem is I'm like L when I'm thinking about religion. Like L, when L found out the Shinigami was whoa, his mind was blown. So it's kind of like I'm like L trying to figure out how's Kira able to kill all these people.
Right.
It feels like there's something else going on here that is not just. So he's just like, okay, so apparently if he sees you and he gets your name, he can kill you. So is there something beyond that we're not used to, that's not inherent within the regularities, within my immediacy of my traditional immediacy, my traditional associations, my traditional evaluations? Maybe there's more going on. So I have to open things up and be like, okay, maybe there's something funneling in, or maybe maybe the immediacy just has more variations to it than I ever considered. Maybe it's not new dimensions, it's just new patterns within, given what's there. So I was just like different ways to think about it. Yeah.
I'm so tired.
I know, I understand. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's all good. I mean, in some ways, this video is just mostly me making it because it's like it's easier for me to talk. I'm talking smarty, but also you're a good listener. I could tell like the process.
Yeah, I'm really trying to like grasp these concepts that you're laying down on me. It was like yeah, I really want to like, be that backboard to bounce it off you, but I couldn't even like think about like what things that I'm like processing through these past few weeks.
Right.
And that's partly because like today, I guess I just woke up early and not really in a fresh mind state.
Right.
But usually like
I wish you told me that before I started. If you said like my mind, I wouldn't have made the video.
And like the thing is like when I started, like I thought I was fine.
Right.
But then like
As we started going, you're just like, okay, this stuff is.
As you started going, okay, I got okay. That tracks. No, now you're just like saying words.
I mean, some of this is also like my own stuff that I've been understanding, ways in which I've been making sense of things.
Yeah.
So no one's.
So it's obvious to you.
Yeah, because it's like other people haven't said this. It's more like my interpretation of certain things and my exploding of certain things.
But also, like, I trust your reasoning. So, like, I know what you said makes sense.
Yeah,
but it just hasn't made sense yet.
I get that. It's kind of, that's how I feel like when my friends talk about mathematics.
Yeah.
Because I can't think mathematically anymore. So sometimes they'll be talking and they'll be like, this, and whatever, category theory, blah, blah, blah. And they'll be talking. And I'm just like, I'm reading. It's like, I know there's meaning here, but it's just like, my mind's not used to my mind doesn't have the tradition. My mind doesn't have like the establishments and what they do and the operations.
Yeah. I guess like, yeah, I was like, oh yeah, so basically like I was trying to like okay, so I was trying to see like, okay, so if I can't like access the spiritual realm, but like, and I want to take what Christianity proposed seriously, like, you know, if Jesus say like, okay, if you believe in me, you're already reborn, like you already have my Holy Spirit.
Because he's saying, because in Christianity, it's not so much you're accessing, it's accessing you.
Yeah, because like he already gave it to you.
Yeah, because it's like, you can say that's the difference between Christianity and magic, at least as far as I understand. Because magic is trying to, you can say because different science and magic are pretty similar, but there's a way in which you can say science tries to go with the immediacy of regularities and the immediacy of how the mind interprets things and constellates things. And then it tries to interface with that to construct certain things or to make certain things act a certain way or to constrain certain things from acting a certain way. So it's more like interactive. While magic tries to like almost kind of get at the I don't know if we'll call it the like almost hidden associations.
Yeah, it's like it has a inherent understanding of what association is.
Yeah.
And it uses that to show like an association that's not common.
Yeah.
That goes below the radar.
Yeah.
So are you saying that like I guess spiritual realm, you can tease it out by I guess like what we were talking about, like what Nietzsche was saying, okay, like well not what Nietzsche.
It's kind of like if you think of it in chemistry, it's like you can create certain chemical reactions, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the magic is sort of like you're getting the chemistry of I'm just gonna call it, I don't know what to call it. It's like some like non-local chemistry or hidden variables chemistry, like they're hidden things that are going on in the background that you can't make explicit to yourself,
right?
But you can, it's implicitly implied, right? You can infer it, and by being able to tap into it, you can make things happen in a way that other people can't trace,
right?
But it's still
like it's like you don't know the process, you don't know the exact ingredients or procedure, but you see the result.
Yeah, it's kind of like manifesting or like law of attraction stuff. Even like that's the type of magic if you think
it's just like a bias.
Yeah,
like
some of that is interpretation, but some of that is also like but magic kind of goes a bit deeper where you actually try to manipulate things by, and sometimes people tap into like entities or something, what they consider to be entities and stuff. Because it's like for every single thing we're saying, you have to put it within some frame. There are certain things you have to establish as this is the case, and this works like this. So it's like we're always, our words, our expressions are minding, like if you think about an axiom or a premise, it's like a dream. And a dream is sort of like a situation. So it's like you're always creating a situation whenever you're talking to somebody. So if you're talking to somebody who has a different situation than you or a different dream, then it becomes hard to communicate with them because it's like that's why like I talk about the atheism theism thing is kind of weird because it's like the theist is okay. Let me put it this way: the theist has it that God made their mind. The atheist has it that God didn't make their mind. So at the end, they still have minds, but it's like what they take to be the origin of their mind and what allows their mind leads to them unfolding different ways of interpreting themselves, interpreting what can be. And then there are other things that come into being like, what do their minds engage with? What have their minds been exposed to? What have their minds not been exposed to? And How do things become, I guess, how do you, if you want to put it in terms of unity, how do you create a unity? Or if you want to put it in terms of plurality, how many pluralities, how many differences are there? So it just makes it difficult. And one of the things I was struggling with when I started losing my faith was like I was noticing how I couldn't, I don't know how to put it, but I was noticing that, okay, I put it to this girl how like take the Bhagavad Gita with Krishna and Jesus. Those are two propositions of reality that I can't think myself into, and if I'm in them, I can't think myself out of them, because there's always a sense of like, well, maybe this is a part of how this thing I'm in actually works. So there's a sense of like whatever you situate yourself in, you'll always like unfold the world in such a way that like conserves to it, that retains, allows things to be kept with it. But if you like are able to explode out, or able to see like your different quote unquote containers, or even weirder, you can liquefy the containers and have them flow in something more mysterious, that's when it becomes harder to interpret. And that's what I was struggling with, because I was just like, I can either contain things, or I can make it all fluid, or I can like just make it like I'll just take to immediacy. Like, so there's just like, it becomes like a matter of like, what are your different orientations towards life? How do you want to situate yourself to interpret things? And that's the point I've gotten to, where I've always wanted to know what movie I'm in so I can know how to act. I want to know reality so I can know how to be. What kind of human being should I be? Or like that's what makes morality difficult for me sometimes, because it's just like I know what I prefer, or rather I tend to know what I don't prefer to, but that doesn't always tell me what I will put as high, because there are ways in which sometimes you'll sacrifice what you want for something else that you want that's higher than that. Like if you decided to die for your wife or something, it's because you value your wife more than your own life, even though like you will need your life to be able to evaluate that in the first place. So there's a way in which you kind of like, there's this weird self-negation for the sake of preserving some ideal, or some context that you're pulling yourself out of. Like, I'm leaving my house, so my house will be able to stay my house. So there's a way in which sometimes there are these weird, I don't know what to call it, but these situations for how life plays out and what we do, and that makes things difficult to like translate.
I mean, that's the idea of the sacrifice in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's trying to allude to with stories. And,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about, like how Buddhism, it's hard to rationalize your way into it, and then once you're in it, it's hard to rationalize your way out of it.
Yeah.
I feel that's the same thing I'm experiencing with Christianity.
Yeah.
Because I'm rationalizing my way into it, and they say, well, you can't. You know, just gotta read the Bible.
Yeah, because there's a sense of like we didn't talk about faith. It wasn't until I realized that faith is basically like, I put it in terms of like, I changed it to a different word of like grant, let it be. Like if you said something like, if I had never met where you live and you were homeless or something, you're like, I live here. I was like, okay, I'll just take that for granted. I'll just let it be. I'll establish, I'll let it stand. And there's a sense of like with belief, there's a sense of like, you let things be what they're presented to be propositionally, or you let them be what they presented to be interpretively, or or experientially. You just kind of like let your consciousness let things situate themselves for you,
right?
And then you see what that affords for you interaction wise, or what you can infer from that.
Right. I mean, like that's the same thing with, I guess, like manifestation. You just like grant that, like if I say I want a Bugatti, it's gonna pop up in my life.
Yeah.
But like, obviously that's not gonna happen. So you start smaller. Like, okay, so I want to find like $5 in any way.
Yeah.
And your brain's gonna find a pattern.
Yeah.
And then it's gonna like, like make it happen. And I'm trying to differentiate that, be like, okay, how am I sure that's not what I'm doing to the
that's the difficulty of like with discernment. Like it's about, because a lot of it is about how do you judge things, how do you interpret things, and that's why I have to like going mad ironically made me a clearer thinker, because I was able to understand the nature of counterfeits, fool's gold.
Yeah.
Like to understand like, because I was able to notice how like there's a way like that, like when I was trying to create paranoia in me, there are two dimensions, two types of paranoia trying to create in me. It created paranoia by speaking to me, like through language, and the paranoia by guiding my interpretation. And paranoia, and then also physiology, paranoia by guiding where my body was facing, what my eyes were looking at, and noticing and stuff like that. So I was noticing how, like, if your system, which gets out of control, there's a part of you, I just want to call it like the I hate my mind. I don't know why this is me. I was thinking of what Da Vinci called it's like the center of where you make sense. Like there's a core in you, there's almost like or maybe a space in you, whatever you want to call it, a space or presence in you that things meet at, or that retains itself, or that knows itself to be what it is, that irrespective to what's going on in your mind, what's going on with your body, what's going on in the world, will just always be there to be like, okay, each of these can go wrong in some way. Each of these can mispresent themselves. My emotions can misfire. I may feel something that's not, like, for instance, sometimes it tries to create certain emotional states in me, and I'm like, that's not my brain doing it. Or rather, it's not inherent. It's not spontaneous it's not inherent to my actual system. It's a part of, it's malfunctioning me, which is weird, because it's like there's this weird sense of which it's a part of me, but somehow I know it's foreign. It's almost like if you were Siamese twins or something, and it's like you could move and you were on this side of my body, but you could move this arm, and I knew that it was you making that happen. But I'm also aware that I can make that happen. So that's kind of how it is in my mind. So having that experience was very interesting, because it taught me how, like, my sense of life, evaluation, all these different things can be guided. So it made me more careful to be like, let me try to
feel what I'm thinking about, not what I'm being influenced to think.
Yeah.
Like having experienced that control taken away from you, the control that you take for granted because you control yourself every day.
Yeah.
It makes you acutely aware of how vulnerable you are.
Yeah. So, yes, exactly. The vulnerability. That's exactly what it is.
I can relate to that. Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why, like, I'm so cautious.
Yeah, for sure. And in some ways that's good for you too, because there's a way in which it's kind of it's like fighting. Like you become heightened, you're like, I'm in danger, but it's just like, but you're paying close attention. It's like, I don't want to get hit.
Right.
Or it's like, but at the same time, it makes you lock on and makes you hit harder too. Right. So there's a way in which
it drains you more too.
Yeah, it also drains you out. Like you get worn down. But it's just like that's what keeps things interesting. That's what creates this interesting about life, where you're on the edge. And there are moments where it's like you have a focus, you have a purpose immediately, and you engage it and you make things happen. And other times, like there are other people who are more by nature, like I was talking to one of my friends who she's neurodivergent, but she's neurodivergent in a way that makes her tired at physiological processes, where she has to do things physiologically, like she has to like do a procedure externally. She has to break it down to steps and then fulfill it. But just the exertion, the act of breaking it down and then doing it tires her out. It wears her down, because it's like she just sees all the different details that goes into doing something. So she ends up losing energy instead of building momentum to just get things through and exert, and then lose energy through that process of actually fulfilling the task. So she goes through that process a lot. And I found that interesting, because my first reaction to that was like, that sounds incredibly weak. And I was also like, how the hell would you survive? And like, like I was just going through that, and I was like, interesting how people can be like that. And then I realized that for her, she can't be the kind of person who's like locked in to do things linearly. She has to be kind of almost like diffused, like kind of like almost like ultra instinct almost. She can't be like focused on something to do it through. She almost has to like kind of feel and flow with things and keep herself like to like do things well. She can't keep her mind locked on, because that tires her out. So it was just like, I was interested with how like it shows how like the different types of traction, ways in which people work. There are people who work better by getting a strong grip on something and moving it, and people who get better by gently nudging it, and so on.
I mean, I used to think that, like, because I used to relate with that too. It's like I can't, like, thinking about the details of a certain action tires me out.
Yeah.
I used to think, oh, that's just me.
Yeah.
But like now that, like, all these things happen, like where like I understand there's a different dimension of things, and I can be influenced in many ways.
Yeah.
So I start to think like, okay, maybe like that's not me. Maybe like, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Like, I lost it.
I get what you're saying. Like, because I look back at my past and there's a weird ambiguity as far as the technicalities of what was symptomatic that I acted on and what was my own inherent spontaneity, inherent in the kind of creature that I am that I acted on, and what was deliberate, what did I actually meditate on to actually do.
Yeah.
And sometimes these blur.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to like know. And sometimes these work in non-linear ways where it's not sequential. It's kind of like you almost fluctuate for like one, or it's like you almost, sometimes you'll think like you're taking a step, but it's like it's almost as if you have multiple feet all in one horizontal line, taking steps at the same time or different times, but you still get somewhere.
Right.
That's a weird image, but
yeah.
So that makes me think of the Hindu images, like Indian images, like the gods with multiple arms and heads.
Yeah.
So I show like the multifacetedness of consciousness and activity and power, whatever.
Yeah. Man, I keep losing it. Like,
I know.
I thought of something while you said something.
Was it about the feet thing?
No, it's about like what was it? Yeah, I lost it. I want something about the fool's gold.
Yeah.
That was before. Like it made me think about like the golden calf for some reason.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, because I would listen to podcasts about Jonathan Pageau's podcast about like, I forgot what it was about, but he was talking about the calf and about AI. And he was alluding to the fact that like it's like the gold that they made the calf out of was the gold they got from Egypt.
Yeah.
And it's the gold that God told them to take.
Yeah.
He trusted them to build the tabernacle.
Yeah.
But rather than doing that, they made
an idol.
Yeah. It's like
that's something that human beings do. That's actually a very deep image.
It is.
For like what people do.
Yeah.
And because the Bible has so many different snapshots of like, this is how reality works.
Right.
Like I've been thinking, like even like one of the reasons why I was telling, like keep coming to morality, because it's like the book of Job is very interesting. That's probably like when God is telling Job, where were you? And he goes to like different types of animals, different types of creatures, because human beings are creatures, we're animals too. I mean, and also we're made out of the world. That's why God tells Adam, because out of dust you were, out of dust to dust you will return. So you're made out of the creation. But there's a way in which God shows Job that, look, almost as if he's saying, infer about the kind of person, being I am, off of the fact that I made these different creatures. I made this creature with wisdom. I made this creature to leave their young and ignore them and almost be cruel and stupid. I made this creature incredibly powerful and terrifying. I made this creature to be very gentle. So it was just like, what does that tell you about me? I'm showing you, like, it's almost like he's saying, like, the nature of this is multifaceted, or it's subject to like so much variation. But there's a way in which there's like, I almost think of it as like the kind of creature you are as a human being. God has set a particular algorithm, a particular software, a particular game for you to play out. That's but he's given different games to other organisms too. And then there's a way in which he relates to you as a particular organism you are. Like there's a way in which God relates to predators. Like he said, he gives predators their food. So he creates other animals, so other animals will consume them. You see? So it's just like, what does that tell you? So there's ways in which, and like, it's so interesting. Like there's something deep going on here that I can't articulate well, but it's just like life consumes life to preserve other life. Life kills off life to preserve other life. But then God being the source of life, he can resurrect it all. He can, like he says, I create order and I create chaos. I can build, I can destroy. And people sometimes get fixated on the fact, the destruction part.
Right.
And people like lots of atheists are like, look at the destruction and stuff like that. I'm just like, well, yeah, if you make, like, if I'm not, like, because people don't, ironically, they try to speak as if they can speak outside of God's perspective above him to judge him, but they don't ever speak from like, well, what does this imply that, what's God's perspective on this, that he's the creator. He made it, so it's like he can get rid of it.
Right.
You don't like that because you feel threatened, because it's about, because every morality at heart is about what's to your advantage. What do you prefer for the particular creature that you are to keep going, to have your values, to have what's important to you. But it's like, if that violates that, or if you notice that you're vulnerable, or you're in a position where you're under someone that can destroy you, you consider that evil. because that's against you. Because for instance, Nietzsche put it as like the lamb will say the vulture is evil, but the vulture is like, I love lambs, they're delicious, something like that. So you see what I mean? How like good and evil become very like interesting when you think of it that way.
So
You're a bit too far away, so maybe if you speak about that, I catch you.
Yeah,
I know it's a lot.
yeah, but it's like the thing we're talking about, like I keep losing it. But yeah, anyways, like it's hard to like try to like oh fuck it, I'll just speak in terms of Christian terms. It's hard to come to faith.
Yeah,
it's
of
hard
course,
to
very,
like
very
trust that Jesus is life.
yeah,
like the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah,
It's hard to like know that when like a lot of Christians like know it to their core. I look at them, I'm like, how did you reach to that conclusion? Like when like when I know experiences can be implanted into you.
Yeah.
Because they had it implanted into me.
Yeah.
Like how do you trust your experience?
Yes, that's a question. That's the question I've been asking because like I gave that example like experience, model or understanding,
right,
and behavior. And these can decouple from each other. Each of these can be messed up. You can have a true experience or experience that's like gold, misunderstand it as fool's gold or even diamond, and act on it as if it's wood or something. So it's just like there's a way in which like these can like decouple or mess up on each other.
right.
And it makes life interesting for sure, honestly. It creates a lot of variation, creates a lot of like different flavors of stuff. But if you're trying to come to a clear understanding, there's just sort of a different. And there's also like you can't do it all on your own. You do it with other people too. That's why people form communities.
Yeah.
And there's a way in which we kind of like act as different nerves for the world, different nerves for ourselves, like our viscera, the viscera of our mind, our interoception, how our minds or emotions work. So it's like, oh, you're more sensitive to these emotions, and you're more sensitive, or the world, you're more sensitive to these kind of, you're more sensitive to color, you're more sensitive to shape, you're more sensitive to movement. Just like interact with different people, you kind of get like different pieces of stuff that you're not naturally taking in.
So I guess that's why like Jesus is the head of
the
and then the church is the body.
Yeah.
Really both.
Yeah.
Because
right now it's kind of like we're kind of like hands or maybe hearts even trying to act like heads or trying to understand the head. Yeah. But it's just like sometimes there's a way in which there are certain things that you can't understand till you see it interact with other things or till you see it progress in some way. Like maybe you learn more about the heartbeat by getting it to beat fast or something. Yeah. So, and then by it beating fast, you're like, okay, it turns out my head can regulate my heartbeat this way by thinking this or by looking at this or whatever. And so you learn there's a way in which you kind of leverage resourcefulness. You get at things indirectly and make things. And Christianity has this way in which, like the best way I could put it is, one of the things I notice about God is he's not linear. Mm-hmm. Like he makes you linear in how he presents and things, like how he instructs you, but how he does things is very non-linear. It's like you can't predict it. And even Jesus described the spirit as like wind. Yeah. So he's like, you don't know where it starts, you don't know where it's going, but all you know is that it makes you alive. And that feature keeps things very.
But I don't know that it's keeping me alive. That's the thing. Like I don't know how to intuit. Like, okay, without Jesus, I'm dead. Like I don't know what that means. Yeah. Like I don't know what that looks like, and I don't think I'll ever will because like, well, I'll be dead. I wouldn't be thinking. So like, and I can't just assume that because I'm alive, that's because of him either. You know. So. Yeah, like I don't know how to, because like he says like once you believe in him, he gives you the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And that's how you start to change, or
like it'll lead you in, I think, what is it? Lead you in wisdom and truth or something.
yeah,
Like it'll let you know or reveal things to you.
yeah.
And that's why I have to let you borrow this book, but I'm waiting for my brother to finish it. In fact, I might just take it from him because he's had it for like 3 months now. I should have been finished reading it by now.
I was gonna return the Matthew Passion's book.
Language of Creation.
Yeah, I lent it to my dad, but he didn't realize that like I got it from you.
Is he still reading it?
Yeah, so
let him finish it. Yeah, the more the merrier. The more people learn from these things, the better. Like I share the things I share because I'm almost trying to get people to be kind of familiar with the things my headspace is in or my memories. Because it's like there's certain things you can't talk to people about unless they have the same memories as you.
Right.
Like remember the whole common thing, what you can translate, what you can communicate. But if other people don't have it, either emotionally or experientially or intellectually or whatever, then you can't talk to them.
Right.
If not, you just get stuck with yourself. So it's almost as if I'm trying to cultivate a community, at least with people I trust or friends that I find interesting, where there's certain things I share with them, certain things I don't, or certain things I think they might find interesting and whatnot. And then I go off of that to see.
Right. Yeah.
But mainly, the main thing I'm lacking right now is practice. Because if I try to like think about what I believe, because some of it can become like I'm trying to look too much at how my mind is feeling. It's like my mind doesn't feel like I accept this. But it's just like there's a way in which if you just leave the mind alone, be like, I'll let this be, and then I'll live from it. Or you're just like, okay. And then you'll see like because a lot of my problems comes down to I haven't been healed when I want to, and I get impatient. Or I start to distrust, like, well, what if these people, or what if they're dealing with what I'm dealing with? What if they're dealing with other entities? Like it's like I become too caught up in like possible explanations. There's not so much possibilities. Like I'm not a person with infinite possibilities. I get caught up in plausible interpretations for why things can be playing out the way they are. And so but then it becomes like, how do I verify it? Or how do I go through the process of elimination?
Right.
And then, so it just becomes, so sometimes I just do this thing of like, okay, I'll default to it for now and see what happens. And in the past, it used to make me despair because I was just like, why do I have to get caught up in this? Why does my life have to be this way where like, I have to, like, I'm a part of something that wants to do something with me or make me a certain way, or that I can only communicate with a certain community, but I can't communicate with others outside the community.
Right.
So, and then even within the community, sometimes I can't get a community to meta on itself, to understand new ways to interpret itself or what's going on with it.
Right.
So there's a way in which, that's kind of what I've been doing. I'm almost interested in the psychology of Christianity, like, because that's what Nietzsche was interested in, and he felt like Christianity was like a religion of slave morality and a religion of pity, which he thought was like weak. And he also thought it was a religion of resentment, and he hated resentment and stuff. He hated vengeance, all these different things. So it's just very interesting where it's like you see where understanding and morality interface with what do I call it, presences in the world and absences that create a situational device as far as how things play out. And that's why I struggle, because it's like sometimes I have to like get out of the thinking. Or sometimes it's almost like there's almost a part of me that kind of like I make videos like this sometimes because it's like I want to translate to people, this is how a person can struggle. So it's like if there are people in the future who are like me, or people who are like me right now doing this thing, they can be like, you're not alone. And I know maybe whether this is true or false, you're going through this process. And I think it's cool to like see it play out. And I find that interesting because for me, at the end of the day, this is all life to me.
Right.
I'm still living life. I'm still like, sometimes I don't know, I have this weird sense of wonder. I'm just like, so quickly I can be confused, or so quick I can be lost, or so quick I can feel pain. And it's just like, I just find it so interesting. It's just so interesting. Like, this is cool. Like, I'm here. So that freshness, when I keep that, makes me say yes to life. And That's mainly what I've been concerned with, and trying to see how this instructs me to interface with people a certain way, and how I benefit them, what I think the story is, where I think we come from, where I think we're going, what I prioritize, what I ignore, and when, along with these things and stuff. So it's all life, honestly. We're living. We're still living.
Right.
Did you call Uncle Dave, by the way?
Hmm?
Did you call Uncle Dave?
Yeah, I texted him.
He didn't respond?
He responded. He said, "Yeah, I'll bring your." Because like when I came back, like I've been putting off the sign for some reason.
Yeah.
Just like
maybe because a part of you feels like it won't do anything.
Yeah, part of me feels like that, and part of me was like overthinking about how do I measure equal parts 7 out of like the junk. Like it's a stupid thing. A part of me was like, well, like I want to find the perfect time to start, or
Right.
like, oh, I'm working and I'm trying to get more hours, like and the Psalms are long, and like reading it 7 times and praying each time during like praying 7 times and then reading the Psalm 7 times before bed. Like, oh, I gotta wake up at 4. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Like,
it's like you have to make time for it.
Yeah. And I'm like, I really want to play video games too.
Hey, that's the trade-off.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I mean, that's the sacrifice.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
And like even yesterday, I was like, I have like an hour to play games. And then my dad was like, you want to read the Bible? It's like, play games. Like I went and like feed my dog.
Yeah.
And then like by the time like I came back up, I have to like, you know how my house is laid out. Like I have to come back up to the living room to see him play his game.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let's read a chapter.
Right.
And then I knew that like as soon as like we read it, like I'll probably comment on it and then it'll go on
right
for a while.
Yeah.
So instead of like having an hour to play games,
yeah,
I talked to him for 2 hours. I'm like, great. I mean, at least I read.
Right.
And
you're doing better than me. I haven't read the Bible since last month. Almost over a month.
I mean, like I feel like I have to read it once.
Yeah.
And like
all the way through.
At the pace I'm at, I'm like, this is gonna take forever.
It does feel like that, trust me. But you'll get through it. And once you do, you're just like, okay, that's interesting. Because I've only read the whole Bible through maybe at most probably twice or 3 times. But then I've read other books multiple times, like over and over again, including listening.
Right.
But it's one of those things. But definitely want to get through it, because especially like when you go through it with different mindsets too, or different things you're looking for. It's like, how does economics work here? Or what's the political? Or how does what's going on with women? Or what's going on with children? Or what's the theme? Or what's the illustration? What's going on with what's God doing? Why is God not speaking here and stuff? Like the book of Ruth. Was it Ruth? No, Esther. It's the only book where God's not mentioned, but you have a sense that he's in the background. It's really interesting, the stylistic choice they made there.
Yeah.
So they're just things like that. Wow, it's all working, because it's a really weird situation where it's like you come into this world, and then let me take it back, because I've been trying to think of. I wish I could think. It's irritating. I can talk, but I can't think. So it makes it annoying. So when I talk about it, like, what do you mean you can't think? Look at all the stuff you said. I'm like, no, that's not thinking. That's just speaking and then building off of what you're saying. But like the thinking for me is more like you're constructing, you're putting things together, you're reasoning things through, you're expanding things, you're closing certain things, you're locking on certain things. And I can do that while talking. I can play on it because like there's reflexivity. I'm looking, paying attention to my sounds and building momentum. But I guess I was thinking of it in terms of like, I was thinking in terms of hardware and software, because the way in which that relationship is so interesting to me, because it's like you get presences and they have their own traditions of duration, and they have the traditions of relation and stuff. And then there's a way in which you can abstract out, you can extract out the nature of these relations, the nature of these durations and stuff. And then that becomes its own duration and relation. within a different domain in your head. And then there's a way in which you can even put that into a different medium, maybe symbols and stuff. And then there's a way you can use those symbols to like do different things. So there's a way in which things kind of can like stack on each other, or like can be broken apart and used to like illustrate things about each other, like mirror things about each other, but within different, but as different. It's like it's almost like it's like different. Like you have clay, you have. I'm just thinking of it. Okay, I'll use painting. You have like different colors. I have a different palette, but the colors are also mirrors. So there's ways in which you can mirror the same thing in different colors.
Right.
And then there's a way in which you can mix colors too. And so I just find that process fascinating when I think about the world, when I break it down, or when I look at how ideas work. And I lost where I was going with that, but my point is, I guess my point was, I'm always trying to figure out. There's a way in which we come through this world, and this world interfaces with us a certain way, and then we represent it to ourselves through a different medium, such as text. And then that text itself has representations in it. And then those representations instruct us to be certain ways. And there's ways in which we also instruct those representations to reveal different things about that. And then that text unless exists in the world that's also interfacing with us in a certain way. So there's a way in which things are like turning in on themselves and turning out and making like interesting ways. And that process is so interesting to me, of like how we're getting a sense of ourselves in the world and from each other. And then it gets even weirder because I'm gonna use a different metaphor of like there are certain things that are born out of the interactions that are not the fundamentals of that interaction, nor are they the spaces, but they're born out of the actual relations. But then you get the representations of these new births out of interactions. You get the representations of the fundamentals. You get the representations of the spaces. And then these form their own interactions. These form their own reactions and representations. And there's just like this way just things can like, and then from that you get like the different, I guess, counterfeits. You get representation. Then once you push that away, even as an object, you look at yourself and you're like, the different ways you can work concerning it. The different ways you can even misfire or malfunction concerning it, concerning yourself. So it just makes the world very complex. And I'm just speaking out like my sense of like how the world presents itself to me sometimes when I'm trying to understand it.
Right.
So like, yeah, it's like art and technology at the same time.
Yeah. It's like the creativity and the rigidity.
Yeah. The order and the chaos.
Yeah.
All the ways you want to put it.
It's
yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting for sure. And I'm just glad I was able to articulate that, because maybe somebody will find that interesting. That's what they do with it. But this is my sense of things right now. Somebody challenges it. That's cool. I don't mind challenging. Maybe they'll just give me a new angle, because I'm all about the technicalities. Like I gave this example to this girl of like, this is a stupid example, but it's just like, because there's no context, but you have two magnets, right? But you don't know the force of those magnets, whether they're opposite or identical. So you see the magnet, but then you also don't know the context that's in the peripheral hidden from the magnets. So you don't know, like suppose like you have two magnets, you see focus two magnets, but the outside is metal. So the magnets can be pulled away from each other to attract the metal on the outside.
Right.
So, but you can also see if the magnets are opposites or something. No, the same, they can repel each other. So there's a way in which you can have an ambiguity of like, you see the magnets move away from each other, but were they being attracted towards something, or were they being pushed away from each other? And that's how I think.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to understand. And that ambiguity sometimes with life makes like, how to interpret what's the force going on.
But except like, unlike this metaphor, you can like expand your scope of vision a bit, and you can see the full context. But then like when you're talking about life, there's dimensions that you can't even access, say the spirit realm, or like the realm of like collective conscience, all that. physics, friction, like you can't account for that.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't zoom out, and like you have to like account for things in a limited perspective that you have.
Yeah, and there's almost like this sort of like a, because it comes a question of like, what narration do you take, and or if you don't want to take a narration, why, and so on. Like you could just be like, oh, I just saw them, because whatever way you say it or whatever way you experience it, you still have a sense of something happening. Where like I see them moving away from each other, or you could say they're not moving away from each other; they're moving in different places. They're moving towards certain things. So like the selection, the fact that you have to translate it through language, or you have to translate it through like interpretation, like already, like the mere happening itself, it's almost as if the happening includes an interpretation of itself already. It's already embedded. There's a theory embedded in the experience where it's like, yeah, pretty much. So it's just that feature of life makes it interesting, where it's just like I can't be in a state of non-interpreting, of non-judgment.
Right.
By nature of being conscious, there's a way in which, like, people sometimes talk like, I want to talk about things as they are, but it's just like
they never are.
They never are.
Yeah.
It's more like you are also.
Yeah. It's like while you're interpreting it, the things you're interpreting is shifting, and you're also shifting.
Yeah.
Trying to capture a moment.
Yeah.
In the past.
Yeah.
But it's already changed.
Yeah.
And your interpretation can't catch up with the rate in which it's changing.
Yeah.
Things.
Sometimes that happens. Another time you're just like, I do notice that what's changing, even though it does not last, it persists for a while. And that persistence, because if it did not persist at all, there'll just be a void.
Yeah.
It'll just be purely empty. And you will not note anything. It'll just be like going deeper into depth or spacing space. It'll just be like, that's almost like there's a way in which you wouldn't be happening. Other operations that make you wouldn't be activating.
Yeah.
So it makes it impossible to have a sense. And without a sense, there's no self. Without a self, there's no relation to other selves or other senses. And so there's like, that's why I've seen Buddhism as like a sort of like sometimes almost like an attempt to negate the appearances, negate the life that you actually live. Because Christianity and Judaism are not like that. They're more like you are here, you're embedded, you have the consciousness you do, you have the body that you do, you have the people that you know, you have the life that you're living on the planet. Like everything it's all here, it's all together. There's no looking for essences, there's no trying to like, and then it's like, I don't know, because a lot of these things that we come to, at the end, they were like, there's always faith, there's always belief. Like even God being eternal, right?
Right.
We believe that God's eternal. For all we know, maybe God just lives almost infinite, then he died or something. Like we don't know that. We just accept that. Oh, he's eternal because he says he is. So it's just like there's a weird way in which you kind of grant things. When we talk about the laws of nature, it's like we don't. There's a way in which we, as a time process, emerging in this for a short while, we don't last for the universe to know that it ends or if it cycles.
Right.
So there's a way in which you kind of, and then you're in your immediacy, so you can't, there's almost this forensics to like trace it to somewhere it started, but there's a way in which it may not be linear, but you're trying to trace it back, but it's like, what if there are multiple backs? Or what if there's a way even more absurd, like whenever you're going back, you're moving forward through time. So by moving forward with it, you're moving the goalpost or you're losing track. You see what it's weird. It's a really weird idea, but it's like there are different ways in which there's just so much like we have to grant. We can't help but believe,
right?
Because it's like that's what lets things hold together,
right?
That establishes things and allows us to unfold a story and unfold a life in itself. Because if not, you'll go crazy, or you'll try to like get rid of it all. But then once you get to certain states, it's like, well, how do you live that?
Right.
And then maybe you might be able to live it for yourself. But it's like, how do you relate to other people with that? So there's that difficulty.
Yeah, and that's what like Buddhism try to do. Yeah, the faith part is just hard.
I mean, what's the difficulty with faith? Like, is it the uncertainty? Is it the lack of relation? Is it the lack of experience? Is it
It's like
a lack of prediction? Or
yeah, just lack of certainty, like not being able to like confirm like if something, like let's say like if like a prayer was answered, like
yeah,
if that was because I engaged in something higher, it listened to me,
yeah.
and if that thing like if that's what happened, or is it just coincidence, or like am I just having a good day, or like am I just being biased, like
Yeah, I get that. I guess it becomes almost like by getting into that state, like let me put it this way. Doubt feels like a black hole and a detachment.
yeah,
But it's like it's a detachment that takes you away from the object you're engaging with.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, you have to act on the object. So it's just like at the end of the day, if you prayed and you got an experience, confront that experience and go with it forward.
yeah,
There's a way in which if you just get into like because that was my problem too when I was like doubting. I was just like, how do I know it's this, and that? It's like, no, you sometimes just have to like you're betting. It's like you're playing poker. It's like I can't read your cards. I can't see your cards, but it's like I can maybe think probabilistically that this is most likely, or maybe I'll get patterns, or maybe I'll get a sense of like this is how many cards there are, or I get a sense of like this is when this card is played, or you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you have to take action. Life is a gamble. You risk.
yeah,
There's lots of uncertainty, and so that's why even Jesus put it in terms of like those who lose their life for my sake. Jesus asks what he requests is very difficult because he's like he wants you to gamble on them basically.
yeah,
He's like sell everything you own. Like he gave the parable of like person who's like sold everything they own just to dig up their farm to find a very precious pearl. That's crazy.
yeah,
But that's kind of what we do sometimes too. Even like if you want to become famous or something, or if you want to become a successful person, you'll like you put all your focus, all this hard work into doing
right,
this and developing yourself to be a certain way for something that may not work out.
right,
Or maybe you might get hit by a car and you'll die.
right,
You see, so there's always a gamble, there's always a risk. And that future of risk is what some people hate when they become aware of it, because you could say it's not so much you're uncertain of, I guess, failure or vulnerability or whatever. It's more like you're too certain of it. You're aware, and that certainty makes you not want to go through with it because it's just like I'm aware that some way or the other I'm going to be destroyed in some way. Somewhere or other I'm going to be disappointed in some way. Like that's bound to happen. But I'm also aware that the same thing that allows those failures, those disappointments, those destructions are also what allows healing, what allows development, what allows perseverance, and so on. So there's a way in which you come to let life run.
mm,
And then on another side is also like you prayed, right? And you're like, this happened. Is it coincidence? It's like, well, what else would it be?
right,
Of course, things will coincide,
right,
things will align, things will come to be. So it's like what you're taking is that extra principle, that extra idea that guides how instructs your mind on how to interpret things. And that's what the Bible's doing. The Bible's saying, like, you take it like this, but this is what's going on. Like, see it this way, proceed with this way, and see how it unfolds for you. Or even a relationship is like that, where it's just like when I'm talking to you and I'm presenting to you certain ways of like, this is how you should take me, this is the kind of person I am, or this is how you should take the ideas I'm presenting to you. So you're always being influenced, and there's sometimes you just have to like, you're like, I'm willing to gamble on you. It's tough, but it's just like you have to, and that's what I came to because I was like, I think Kierkegaard put it as sometimes Christianity is the faith with it is like a gamble without a criteria. There's like I don't have a reference point. For instance, like we've had prophecies in our lives, right? Where God will do certain things or wants to take us somewhere. But it's like that hasn't happened yet. So if you come like, well, how do I know what happened? Well, I don't know what happened. You think through that day by day. You never do or act in a way that lets that actually unfold itself. It's almost like a flower that's somehow able to like break itself down as it's growing, so it never blossoms into a flower because it just keeps stopping itself from developing instead of like moving itself through. Just being like, okay, I took this, let me go with it. Oh, it didn't work. Okay, let me go with this. So it's just like you have to keep things moving and engage, and it's easy to become paralyzed by that.
yeah.
You're too far away. You sure like sitting back. I know because like it becomes uncomfortable to like
yeah.
yeah.
And also, like I also like struggle with like the Jesus is a personal God thing. Like, it how like I don't understand where the personal comes from. Like, it feels like I'm just like creating a persona
Right.
to talk to it,
Yeah.
like in my head,
Yeah.
like when I'm praying.
I mean, you are.
Yeah.
You're doing that for me too.
Yeah.
There's like you can't experience that my mind is working like yours.
Yeah.
So you're just like maybe like suppose or imagine if you had a social media relationship with someone who you only knew through text. You never saw their pictures.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying is basically God is I'm interacting with God the same way I'm interacting with you. The only difference is you have a body that's made out of matter, but God has a body that I can't see because it's beyond me.
Yeah.
And it communicates.
It contains you.
Yeah, and then okay. Yeah. And then it communicates in a language that's more like fundamental.
Yeah.
Like symbolic.
Yeah.
Or like harder to understand.
Or even a story, even like using an example of a person or using an example of a situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the Bible is a very specific book.
Right.
Like it's made out of specifics, like particulars. It's not, yes, it'll give you some patterns across, but it's just like it very much zooms into like this, there's this kind of person who was like this. There's this kind of situation that played out like this. And a lot of our best literature is like that. Or even our own, like if I told you a story like about what happened with me yesterday, you like, oh, I took a lesson from that, or I took like a judgment, I made a judgment on that. Because it's like, if you gathered all those different pieces, those different parables, those different metaphors, those different instructions, those different preferences, all these different judgments and stuff, you get a life of what you have on how to be.
Yeah.
So it's just that process of being a human, of understanding. And even if the Bible were false, it's just kind of like, or rather, if God is not the God of the Bible, or if there is no God or whatever, maybe it's just an empty word or whatever, you're still unfolding in some way. So it's just like I told my auntie sister how like you can't choose your perceptions. You can choose what perceptions you'll bet on. You can't choose your preferences. You can choose what preferences you'll trust or act on. You might not be able to like activate it. You're not the one. You don't cause China to exist and work out of this, but maybe someone from China can visit you. So it's just like there's a sense of I take the sense of like you meet things as they are, as they come to you, and maybe you go to it and see what happens. Like, and that feature of interaction, interfacing, relation, that feature of drawing near or drawing farther, that feature of liking, disliking, that feature of stitching things together to like make a something linear, or to accept that things can be non-linear, and like that keeps things okay.
Yeah. Yes, it's hard to like, I guess, bob and weave with it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I just like really like hold on to things that like the Bible say about like, seek and you shall find.
Yeah.
It says it in such brazen confidence, like it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I misinterpret that as like seek and you shall find now.
Right.
Rather than seek and you will find.
Yeah.
I didn't say when.
Yeah.
And I didn't say how.
Yeah.
So to me, like, like I guess like it's the insecurity thing about like, okay, there's like this could not work out because of how loosely it can be interpreted, even though it's stated explicitly.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah.
Because it's like you don't have your own specifics. You don't have your own particular yet.
Yeah.
You only have other people's testimonies of their particulars.
Yeah.
And you can go off of that and see what happens. Like, for instance, I know other religions help people in their own way. I'm aware some, good values, states of mind, meditation, interpretation, understanding, ways of being able to interface, emotional regulation, all these different things. I'm aware of that. I'm aware of like the technicalities that overlap. I'm also aware of the technicalities that have a non-relation to each other. I'm aware of all of that. I keep track of it. So just because it's like, I guess I keep coming to is like at the end of the day, you're going to live.
Yeah.
You're alive. And then you're also going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it drives me, it makes me annoyed that it's like, why is it that so much of my life is dependent on what my mind affirms?
Mm-hmm.
But that's just I make that affirmation propositional. But it's not merely propositional. That's something you just put into words sometimes. Sometimes it's like a lot of people, I know, like I personally, despite how pessimistic I can be sometimes, I have a holistic hope. The sense of like things will take care of themselves.
Yeah.
So I still have that, and that drives me forward. I don't know where it comes from. I don't even know if it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And if I give that up, then I become like nihilistic and like
Right.
pessimistic and whatnot. Then it's like, well,
it's the only thing that works.
Yeah.
Like when you come to hope in the end.
Yeah.
It's like at this point, to me, it's irrational, but like it's the only thing that keeps me want to keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say it's non-rational or maybe meta-rational, because it's like rationality. Like, why would you care about rationality? Why do you trust it?
Right. Yeah, that's true too.
So there's that feature there where it's like,
why wouldn't you trust like non-rationality? You know?
Yeah. And then even rationality, it's always embedded in, or let me break it down to etymology, like ratio, the sense of like you're selecting,
Yeah,
you're getting a slice of things, rationality, ratio. So there's this sense of like, and that has a sense of judgment, preference, selection, evaluation, relevance.
yeah.
So there's this feature of you're still embedded in something that's so rich that you have to take a bit of. You pull away from certain things, you pull towards certain things,
Right.
and so on. So that's life. Life is preference. Life is bias. Life is asymmetry. Life is judgment. Life is selection of what you take in. Well, we're not total. So it keeps it interesting for me, honestly. And I like talking about, because it's like when you're getting at it, like that's why I asked you this question, because it's like what are you going through? I think people. Hold on, let me pause it. Did it pause? Okay. I forgot where we left off. Oh yeah, actually I remember. I was talking about how like I'm aware of that other interpretive schemes work. There's a way in which, how do I put it? I guess I want to put it this way. Even if Christianity is true or whatever, like if Yahweh is Yahweh, he says he makes it rain and shine on the wicked and the righteous, on the, you can say, the ignorant and the knowledgeable, the foolish and the wise. So there's a way in which life still goes on.
Right.
Life is still here. So my whole task as a seeker has always been like, let me try to shift myself within the selected or rarefied state of what is righteous, what is wise, what is knowledgeable, what is strong, and so on. And then even if, or sometimes for the sake of life itself, even maybe I'll give that up, because I'm the kind of person who I can build myself up to become a living sacrifice. That's me at my best. I'll strengthen myself. I'll give myself all the power just so I can weaken myself and channel that power into like some like system. I'll become a battery for it. So we'll keep going.
Yeah, that's what Jesus did.
Yeah, so that's what Jesus did. So that's one of the reasons I admire Jesus, because I saw that thing with him. I was just like, that's kind of how I am at my best.
To all of us to carry the same cross.
Yeah,
as best as we can.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly. See, you understand Christianity very well. Yeah. So does that feature?
Jordan Peterson taught me that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's fine. It's all good.
Mystic lover.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So there's that feature there. So that's what I'm about, honestly. And it's difficult trying to reconcile my technical understanding, my capacity to hold things, because there's also a way in which I hold truths and falsehoods. Like every truth I hold also like is, if you want to think it in terms of like objects, has objects of falsehood with it, where it's just like I know all the different ways these can be taken as false. or all the different alternatives or the counterfeits, like fool's gold,
right,
next to real gold, so on. So I track that too. I track errors. I track the nature of mistakes. I track the nature of problems. So that's why I told you, like, the absence is just as important as the presence too. So there's that feature there with me. So it allows me to like keep my judgment and to keep like being like that's how things work. And I guess because there's almost like a dual, because there's a dual relationship you have in life in Christianity where you have a relationship to your fellow man, you also have a relationship to God. And with God cares about my heart or my motivation, my purposes. And when I'm at my best, I'm like David, a man after God's own heart. And God's heart, when people talk about heart in the Bible, it means your motivation. What are you driven towards? What animates you? What's your intent? And what's your purpose? What's your goal? What's your end state? So I'm after, like, how does God want me to be? What's his goal for me? What's his motivation for me? How does he want me to activate? And then what does he want for the world from the kind of life I live, and so on. So that's me at my best. So there's that feature there with him. And then also, like, who am I as far as my relation to him? But then for human beings, my fellow man like you, whether you were an atheist, a Buddhist, or a fellow Christian, I want you to be able to understand the kind of creature that I am.
right,
And how, like, my giving to the highest parts of me, the best parts of me, or the worst parts of me, generate the life I live. Like, for instance, I found out yesterday that one of my friends from high school, he's basically been involved with child pornography. He was arrested, and yeah, it was crazy. And they say he flashed a kid or something in a truck, and that was crazy. I was just like, whoa, this guy, because I knew him and he was very funny, he was very kind, and from what I could tell, he liked girls like his age, because we were teenagers then and stuff like that. So I did not know he was into kids. So I was like, did something malfunction in his brain? Did he always have this side to him, but maybe he didn't get into it? Right. Did he watch too much porn and he started watching taboo porn, and then he decided to give into that desire in real life? Like, I was thinking, like, because there are different alternative ways people can become certain ways. So, and I was just like, it was just very sad to me. And I was just like, oh, we can get help, and I hope those kids will be okay too. And so I was just thinking about that. And I was just thinking about my own sins, the ways I wrong people, stupid things I've done. Whether most of the time, because most of the time I don't intend bad. Like, I noticed, like I was telling my younger sister, how, like, I noticed how, like, growing up, I've always been I've always been aware of the nature of manipulation. Like, I'm a very manipulative person in the sense of, like, I know how to influence things. I know how to, like, get people's minds to go a certain way. I know how to make people feel certain things. I know how to like act. I know what to show and what not to show to get people's perceptions. But I'm also a person who's very frank. I'm also like to just do something like this stands out in front of you, like, just like bam. So I noticed how, like, there are different animations in me that will make me certain ways, and some of it also symptomatic. So that's why I was telling you with the whole, like, what's symptomatic, what's spontaneously inherent to the kind of system or technology that I am, and what's deliberate, what's me actually making it like this, or what's making me making a habit out of this. So it's like all these different whatever make you. So I was thinking about him. I was just like, I could easily be you if something went wrong with me, or if I did something. So it was just like, I didn't hate him.
That's the thing that's necessary to be able to see the hell that you can create.
Yeah.
And fully believe in that capability.
Yeah.
So that you can do the opposite.
Yes, right? Of course. For sure. Because that's one of the things sometimes, like, if I'm honest, a lot of times I'm very scared of my capacity for evil. Like, today, my sister had me put in her earrings into her second piercing, and I was scared because I've been putting on the earrings before on my own or anyone else, and I was afraid I'd hurt her. Like, I was freaking out. Like, she was like, "Why are you breathing so hard?" It was like, it was just like, I was like, because like, I don't know, I feel it going into your ear hole, but it's just like, I don't see it coming out the other side. What if it goes sideways and then it pokes, like, it messes up the inside? It's just like, I was just like, there's so many ways this can go wrong because I'm not skilled. So when you're not skilled or something, when you don't trust your competence, you see all the ways things can go wrong, and it makes you anxious to have that. You have that prediction error because you don't know how to handle a situation. So there was that going there. So I'm and even with, like, fighting, like, I want to fight, but it's like, I don't like hurting people, but it's like, well, it's the risk. And then there's also sometimes it paralyzed me in life where it's like, there's a period, like, I want to become a monk because I don't want to sin. I don't want to do a mistake. It's just like, you're bound to, just by nature of existing, whether intentionally or not, you will do wrong. You will hurt something. Like, you'll walk and you'll step on an ant. There's a way in which your mere presence takes from the world and adds to the world in different dimensions. So it just becomes a matter of, I guess, how do you coordinate this deliberately? And then how do you make this habitual? Like you go from unconscious incompetence, where you're not aware of the things you don't do or things you do badly and things that you should do that you're not doing. Then you make that conscious incompetence. Then you turn that into conscious competence and then unconscious competence. And so that's what I'm going. Like you left the toilet seat up, and I was like, you have a wife. I guess you don't. You're still not used to like bringing the toilet seat down. But I've been living with women my whole life, so I was just like, I always put the toilet seat down.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even sit on the toilet, so stuff like that. So it's just like you just learn how to like make these little things, and you see these different patterns of people when they're like up close and stuff like that. It's very interesting stuff.
No, I should be putting it down. I have a wife now. Yeah.
Did she complain to you about that?
Used to.
I bet. I just sounds kind of like, well, if I have to pick it up, why can't you put it down? But it's just like, well, I'm gonna be a gentleman. I'm gonna look out for you. So that's love.
Yeah.
That's care. It takes care of details too. So it's one of those things. So yeah, I just wanted to, I don't know why I said all that, but just like I just wanted to say, like, just give people a sense of my ethical advocacy at my best. I have never reached my worst, but I know my potentials.
Right.
But I also know my best dispositions, and that's what I want to capitalize on and leverage. But I also want to like factor in my weaknesses. Like one of my favorite quotes by Napoleon. This is a paraphrase, but he says like, use your weaknesses, use your faults, use the things about you that suck, like make them operationalize in a way that works to your benefit. Like for instance, my IT teacher, Sister Priscilla, she has low stamina. She doesn't have a lot of energy. So as a result, it makes her more efficient because she's like, I have to do things in a way that requires the least amount of energy, or do things in a way that gets out of the way fast so I can get more rest. So she's leveraged that weakness of like less energy into like a strength to like in other areas. And that's, you see, that's one of the ways that life works. It's like you capitalize, you use even debts. You use like a debt, you get a debt, and then you use that to like print more money or something, or like create a particular economy, so to speak. So it's just an interesting process going on with how these things work.
Yeah. Something about like, I heard the saying that for a tree to reach heaven, its root need to reach into the depths of hell.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. And you can see how like, and Nietzsche saw this clearly too. He was like, there's a way in which a lot of what we call good is built on a foundation of cruelty. Like even like you talk about asceticism, where you discipline yourself or you abstain from pleasure or whatever as a type of self-cruelty. Like those monks who are like, or even like gurus or whatever, those people in India who like don't eat, who meditate, and they get really skinny, you can see their spine and stuff. That's a type of self-inflicted cruelty for higher states. So it's like you do an evil to yourself for a greater good. So there's a way in which we do also stuff, and like depending on what you zoom into in detail or enlarge, there's a way in which there are deprivations and deprivations, I mean, and there are also excesses, and there are also restructurings, and then there are also like different vantage points, different frames of reference on this, and in this, and as this, that create different stories for what's going on. And this is very interesting stuff. And that's why when you get to the book of Judges, are you in the book of Judges in the Bible yet?
Still in Deuteronomy.
Okay, yeah, when you get to that, one of the verses I find very interesting was like, this was evil from God's perspective. The way you put that, I was like, that's an interesting verse. I'm just like, because you think like it would say like all this is, I guess you almost want to put it like inherently evil, or you'd say like it's absolutely evil.
But like, isn't evil from God's perspective absolute?
Well, yeah, you know what I mean. But I guess I mean like in the fact that it had, because like, well, where else would it be? Of course it'd be evil from his perspective. Why did you say it was evil?
Right.
It didn't say that, but it said it was evil from God's perspective. It had to specify that this was God's. And it put it in the sense of like, from the perspective of these people living these lives and doing these things, it was good to them. But from God's perspective, it was not. And that's the problem, that if Yahweh exists, Jesus exists and stuff like that, he'll be at odds with our natural interpretations, our judgments, our mental shortcuts, our selection of variables to consider. And there are ways in which he'll want us to be a certain way that might be contrary to what we value. Like there are things that I feel are right that I don't do, and there are things I don't feel are right that I do. there are things I feel are wrong that I do. There are things I don't feel are wrong that I do or don't do. So it's just like you see how like, and then there are also things that I don't feel are wrong, but I think I intellectually understand they're wrong. And there are things that, and but you know, you get all this complexity. So it's just like I feel like there's a way in which in life we lay these things out in front of each other, and that's usually what I'm doing because I'm always trying to create transparency where I want people to see like you might feel this is evil, you may feel like a disgust towards this, but I don't feel that, and I don't think that. Like take like homosexuality or something. You know, there's some people who find homosexuality gay. What else? You know, I was saying,
Yeah, so gay, bro.
Yeah, I said it wrong. There's some people who find homosexuality like deviating from the undergirding processes, the undergirding purpose of how human beings should be and how life should unfold. Whether there is invisible that guides it or whether it's a human social thing. And then there are other people who are just like maybe disgusted by it, but they're like, I'm cool with it. Just do what you do, you, whatever. Then there are people who are like, I don't feel it's disgusting and I think it's good. So it's just like, it's just very interesting how like you get different ways that people take the things, and there's a conversation that people are usually aren't having because most of the time people keep to the visceral, like they judge things off of what they are.
Right.
Like this is the kind of person I am to see it this way, but it's not merely like, but I'm the kind of person I'm not just merely how I am. How am I to be like this towards it? But it's also like, what's going on with this, or what can you do with this? How can this unfold? How can this interact? How can this, you know, and stuff like that. So that's usually how I approach things. You can say it makes me more objective in the sense of like I'm dealing with the object.
Right.
What's contrasting me as a subject, and even in reading about myself, I treat myself like an object. Like my consciousness is like I can become objectify it and turn into an object on itself, but it's like generally it's like an I or like a presence, like a situation that's as me in the world and stuff like that. And then trying to see what to make of that. So just these things I struggle with, and yeah.
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 Yeah, for sure. But we can end it now because you have to leave, right?
Yeah, I gotta go listen. Feed my dog.
Right. I gotta get back to homework. But yeah, so I guess we're about to end it. I think I've said the best I can of things, and hopefully people can. I don't even know what to call this video, I guess. Like, we're just
Yeah. Just
God, morality, life, or something.
Yeah, I was just listening to you.
Yeah, I mean, you were listening to me, but I was like,
Yeah.
just going off the topics.
Yeah.
I mean, we hit on lots of things though. Maybe this will be interesting to someone and be help them with their process. And because I've been trying to Harry asked me, he brought up something that I've been thinking about the nature of too, because I feel like these are questions of our times, like, or questions of human life in general, like, what are the natures of emotions and what's the nature of data? And you can think of that in terms of IT, but even life's a type of data in the sense of like you get quantities, but you also get qualities. And the qualities also come with like certain preferences and certain attractions and repulsions. And then you constellate them, you put them together, you organize them in certain ways, and you get information, and then you make predictions out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are also emotions, such as like what animates you, what gives you a sense of flavor, what sensitizes you to certain things. And so it's like the fact that we differ in these creates for a lot of complexity and ways in which we may talk past each other or try to tyrannize each other. Because right now, I'm not like, even though I'm presenting these things, like sometimes I get like this one like, for things I find stupid. Like I'm very dogmatic when it comes to things I find stupid. I'm like, don't think like that's stupid. And then for certain things I find like harmful to people, which I consider the greatest evil, like hurting people, outside of even that's certain things for that. But it's just like generally, and within the social womb, I'm not for hurting people, like physically or psychologically, emotionally, none of that. But I'm losing it. Fuck. Damn, so annoying. Dang, I was losing it. I had it. Whatever.
That's the time.
Yeah.
I had it.
I had it. I had it. I'll call it that. I had it. God, faith, morality. Because those are the main things we talked about. God, faith, morality, knowledge. I guess, oh yeah, I remember. Vaguely remember. Just we're different. And I feel like I want to improve conversation. I feel like people aren't getting the meta on things, and there's a lot of morality is tyrannical. That's one thing that I liked about Nietzsche, that he pointed out that morality likes to like rule. It's like it acts like a king, it acts like a ruler. It's like thou shalt or thou shalt not. So there's this sense of like every moral judgment is a sort of like, or even a preference, because sometimes people have preferences that are like, I like this, therefore I want to keep it. Other times they're like, I hate this, therefore I want to destroy it. Other times they're like, I like this, but I'll leave it alone. Other times they're like, I hate this, therefore I'll leave it alone. But it's like, so there's different ways people take to things.
Right.
And like, remember in that other video we make looking at Russell Brandon Peterson, I said like, people talk about we're divided. I'm like, I don't think we're naturally united,
right?
Because we don't all know each other and we don't all care about each other. Most of the people you see, and even in your day-to-day life, you don't think about them. You maybe not even smile at them because we're not as community focused. But I would say the problem isn't division. The problem is opposition, and it's not. And I prefer there be negotiation,
right,
cooperation, and competition than just outright I want to destroy you, or outright I want to like enslave you.
There's no like effort to try to understand each other's like metacognition, like what drives us to think in the way that we do. And there's no awareness that that's what's driving us to say and do what we do.
Of course.
And I guess like in the lack of a better term, it's like there's no awareness. Some people, there's no awareness, at least in today's society, there's no awareness that like you're putting a God, and that's what's dictating your actions and what you say. Just because you say you're atheist or you're agnostic doesn't mean you don't have something up there. And
even if that something is you reifying yourself as it,
right?
Because almost every atheist who's like a moralizer, they consider themselves they consider themselves almost like God. They never make themselves like relative, because that's why I like Nietzsche. Nietzsche was more like, I have my own morals. Like I value this, I don't value that. But I wouldn't say like it's absolute.
Right.
Like he'd say I'm perspectival, and it's like, and you might be against me, but then it becomes a matter of like, okay, what's healthy, what's powerful, these different things and stuff like that. And that's kind of how Nietzsche originated. And that's why I like Nietzsche and atheism better than modern atheism, which borrows Christian morality while rejecting the God that makes the morality kind of like more operational. Because it's like, if not, it's just like you're just the kind of person who perverts like lots of modern atheists, or you could say egalitarian or whatever. Like, take if you're an egalitarian, but it's just like there's nothing inherently better about egalitarianism compared to hierarchy or something if they both work and stuff like that. And it's just, people just want certain end states or certain middle states they want to maintain, or they want new novelties even. So they try to make things anarchic or chaotic or free things up. And these things come into tension and contradictions and dominance. And you see these play out, all this complexity with how people talk about the world.
Yeah. It's like, society has come to a point where, because of like the structure that we have, that allows for safety, and allows for thinking at the fringes, and we've allowed too much chaos and we haven't been controlling it, and because of that there's like breakdown of identity and not knowing where the line ends. Like the other day, like me and my wife, we were celebrating our anniversary, and in the bathroom of the our restaurant, there's no like, it's like ambiguous. It's just a door. It looks like a closet door. It's a nice ambience, good place. Like, very like good mood lighting. But like the door is just like a wooden door. And it's one. And then the server's like, oh yeah, like we have like genderless bathroom. And I walk in there and I come back and I tell my wife, and she's like, yeah, like I walked in there and I saw a guy. I was like so shocked. It's like, okay. And I see like the the merit in that, and also the demerit. The merit is basically like, okay, like society has come to a point where we allow the degeneration of identity that's been keeping us surviving for so long. And I feel like that should be a good thing. Like that's on the outset, like me looking, I'm like, people should be able to express what they want.
That's the base.
I'm also thinking like, wait, but should we cater to that? It's like, and I think on like,
you see, there's like, let me pause for this. Nietzsche said within every person there's a mixture of moralities, mixture of drive, mixture of even metrics and evaluations, and this causes a lot of, like, you'll hear people say things like, oh, as long as you, whatever you do doesn't hurt anybody, but then it's like they'll see somebody who's not doing anything that's not hurting anybody, they're like, don't do that. So it's just like, you see how like people like, because people, we're not aware of how we activate. We're just kind of like, and there are tensions and there's trade-offs, and that's why the Bible is more explicit about what it's trying to do. Like, God is very intentional. Like, he legit made traditions for the Israelites. He gave them a history. He gave them land, and he gave sections of the land what it belongs to. He set things up economically, legally, socially, sexually, and all this. Like, he gave them a particular order. He gave them a particular story, a particular game to play, to make them a certain way. And at different stages, sometimes these changed or whatever. Like, he also like was incorporating, integrating, and juggling what they were integrating or mutating into, and factoring in their mistakes. The scars they were getting into the system were being smoothed out. So there's a way in which it's a very interesting process.
He's allowing human mistakes, and uplifting that and deifying it to make it holy. Like, you know, like Cain's invention of like the cloth is basically cities. Like he puts on like extra clothing, and that's technology. Anyways, like
and sorry, I'm gonna, like, even like with Jesus, it's weird. Like, God came to take on the sins of the world. You see, that's a really interesting idea. The perfection came to like suck in all the imperfection. It's interesting. And then they negate themselves, and then they come back up more glorious. Like, they come back stronger, they come up get greater, they come more richer. You reveal themselves in a richer way by taking on what things mess up. It's kind of like how, like, if you've known depression and abuse your whole life, and then you discover love and care, like love and care sticks out more to you. The light's brighter because you've known the darkness. So there's a way in which God kind of allows darkness and stuff like that to like shine brighter in it. So it's a very interesting process. You see, like I call it aesthetic, because he's an artist in some ways. Like, there's a story he's telling, there's a process to this, and the art entices us to life, and it also like frames life, and also like encourages life to represent itself to itself and understand itself, and so on. So God is also an artist. He's not just a scientist, not just a lawgiver. He's not just a storyteller. He's not just a judge. So there's all these different things are going on. He's not just a warrior. It's like multifaceted, all these different archetypes that make us, and that we have different genres of interpretation, attitudes. They're all here with him too, and he makes them different ways.
I feel like that, like, you know, the video you showed me about how like the kingdom or heaven on earth, or like or the Holy Land will include the city to, you know, like redeem what was like a shameful invention of Cain to be something to be proud of. And then I look at like AI, I'm like, okay, so we made it. We made it something for us to serve us. You know, like the Israelites creating that golden calf to serve them. So that they can admire what they've created with their hands. Like, same thing with AI. We created it so that we can admire it with our hands and use it for porn or whatever. It's gonna be really hard to control, man. But like
hold on. Okay, we're back again. We're talking about AI.
So it gives me hope that, like, looking at the Bible and seeing how God was able to redeem Cain's technology of cities gives me hope that he will redeem the AI to something for, I don't know, his vision of heaven. Be like, instead of like in hell, we're gonna be using AI to like fuck with our AI waifus. But in heaven, I guess we can use it. I don't know. I don't know what a heavenly AI.
It's very interesting because it's like there's a way in which, like, for instance, David Diga Hernandez, God is using him. He told him to start like an online ministry.
Right.
So it's like the fact we have social media, and God was like, use this, get on there and start your own ministry. So God uses everything.
Yeah.
He uses everyone's. He uses weaknesses. He uses strengths. He uses death. He uses birth, because he's above it all.
Right.
Like I like, and my wife for Job, I put it as like the water puts out the small flame. The large flame boils the water. God rules over both.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like you have that feature of God's able to use it all, and even with how I'm working, the fact that like prophets told me that God was been going to IT or whatever.
Right.
So it's just like, I don't know what he wants me to do there, but I can see how, like, even with IT, like a lot of it fits how I think, because I think like a lawyer, a detective, and an IT person. Those are the main ways. At least my introverted thinking works that way. So
my dad, he got a job in IT now.
Oh, okay.
He took some online certifications.
Yeah.
And he got a job through that.
And what does he do?
I don't really know.
Oh, ask him, because I want to know. Maybe maybe you can hook me up, because I'm like, wow, was that easy? And also ask him how much he gets paid, because I'm interested.
Not much.
Okay, because he's just starting out.
His plan is like to build a resume and job hop.
True.
He just does like this online certification. It's like, I can ask him about it. It's, you just have to study and do the test.
True.
Yeah,
for sure. Because I'm going to be going to school for, if I don't take summer classes and stuff, I'll probably be going to school for almost 3.5 years.
Yeah.
At most. And this is me not even doing a minor. Mm-hmm. Even though I've been to school for 2 years in total already. It's just like not all my credits transferred.
Right.
And then I'm not taking as many classes. I'm only taking like 2 classes per half a semester or semester. Mm-hmm. So, or technically maybe 4 classes a semester, if you want to think of it that way. But it's just like, if I were not in school, or if I were not working or whatever, I could make it on my time to school and take maybe 5 classes or something and graduate maybe on the basic time. But anyway, that's irrelevant. Sorry, y'all. But anyway, but yeah, I guess, or we can wrap this up. But yeah, so yeah, I can see God will definitely use AI, but it's like I told some people on Mongolian podcast, this typing community, that every ladder we extend to heaven also extends to hell.
Yeah.
So there'll always be new problems, because there's a creativity to how problems form. There's an inherency to how, like, everything that can go well can also go wrong. By virtue of being able to go well, when certain misalignments or traditions loosen or interfaces with other features that are not it, due to its interdependence and lack of permanence, or lack of being invulnerable or shielded off from everything, it will change.
By that nature, like, order becomes chaos, chaos becomes order, and that's just a pattern.
Pretty much
inevitable. Yeah.
And that's something that I wish people would understand and come to, like,
it's, you notice it, like I've noticed it when it's like, okay, so let me get this straight. California, the bastion of freedom, is now becoming tyrannical.
Yeah.
And people are like leaving it to go to Florida.
Yeah.
Where people say there's Florida man there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And America, a place where, it's a melting pot, it's celebrated for that, it's now like people are looking at it like, whoa, I don't want to go there.
Right.
The American dream is dead.
Yeah.
The same with Canada, yeah, it's like there's a flip happening.
Yeah.
Like, the things that the fool was saying is now becoming common sense.
Yeah.
And the learned, educated people, what they're saying is like no more, it makes no more sense than like a fart in the wind.
Yeah.
It's like,
And that feature is interesting, because it's like, that's why the Bible puts it as like the fear of God, the respect of God, putting him first, not the wisdom of man, not none of our traditions, because there's a way in which God knows better how to work order in chaos. He knows how to like go with things and stuff, and interfacing with that kind of will guide us. That's how the Bible puts it. But if we try to do it on our own, for instance, take the instance the whole like with the whole homosexuality, right? If God doesn't establish for us the kind of sexual actions he wants us to take, and the kind of social relations that come from this and so on, and we do it ourselves, we can always change it.
Right.
And that's why when people talk about such a social construct, first of all, it's like at base, what else would it be? Of course it'd be a social construct, because we're social creatures. And it's almost like saying something's a moral construct. It's like, well, what else would it be? Or something's like a mathematical construct. Like the world is constructed by nature. Things are made. You have certain orders, you have certain bundles, you have certain relations, and so on. But the question is not that. The question is, do you want to maintain it? And how do you want to change it? How long do you want to preserve it? And so on. Like it's an interface question. It's a question of like, how do you live?
Right.
So it's like people don't take that deep. They're just making like, what's a social construct? Therefore, what you're basically saying is, I want to dismiss it. I don't care for it. Just say that. Because most of the time people will be lenient with things they don't care for, or they'll be opposition to things they hate. And then they'll be, no, I said it wrong. Yeah, that also happens. But yeah, sometimes they'll also be lenient with things they do care for, or they want other people to be lenient with things they care about, or they want people to be neutral towards it, so they won't be judged. They won't see themselves as bad, or see themselves as unhealthy, or see themselves or whatever. So it's just, you get a lot of like people trying to save face and preserve their feelings, and stuff like just facing up to like the reality of like, are you like, if this is not fixed, if this is relative to whatever, for instance, because sometimes it can also be that whole like fool's gold thing too, where it's like maybe you're misunderstood.
Yeah. And also the inherent nature of reality becomes skewed. You can't really intuit it anymore now.
Yeah.
And that's why like what people are saying, like moral construct or social construct becomes the structure, like you say. So it's hard to like step back and be like, wait a minute. Because going against the norm is hard. Yeah.
And new norms form. In fact, you could say it's normal for norms to not be norms after a while.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest norms. The most permanent thing in the world is change.
Yeah.
That's the irony.
Yeah.
But you only notice change because certain things last for a certain while.
Yeah.
So it just becomes a matter of like, what process of growth? Because growth is a type of theming, as a type of story we put on things, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So what type of growth are you having? What kind of care are you having? Because we're growing right now. We're going to become old one day and die. So there's a sense of like, whatever we come to or whatever we're allowing, how do we let it grow and decay? That's usually what I'm talking about, because it's just like, for me, it's not enough to, and then what's the process of this and so on, and the technicalities and communication and order and function, and then evaluation and making people feel valued, protection, development, validation, all these different dimensions of stuff. And like all of these, all the stuff that we seek, all the stuff that we are, they can become so fragmented from each other, and they can become distorted concerning each other. They can be distorted concerning each other from ourselves to others. And so, like, for instance, let me put it this way. I don't know a lot of trans people, but from those I listen to on YouTube, I care for them. I don't know a lot of gay people. I care for them. I know a lot of women, but whatever. I guess I'm trying to think of the people consider, I guess, marginalized or weak, or even though they wouldn't say it, they'd probably say like, these are the inferior people. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't say it that way, but it's just like, you're basically saying these are the people who are weak. These are the people who are vulnerable. These are the people who are ineffective. These are the people who are not valued. These are the people who are not validated, and stuff like that. So I get that. There's that feature there, two things. But it's my Christian dimension that allows that valuation, because I have this idea of the image of God. But if human beings are just like, if I'm just activating in a way to like value people certain ways, it's just a matter of like, well, how do I activate? I may activate in a way that just happens to value or happens to not value. And it's like, you can take it or leave it. Or I may activate in a way that does not value, but I'll treat you well. You can take it or leave it. And stuff like that. So it just becomes a matter of like, how do I put it? You can't make people value you. Yeah. You can't force people to like you. You can't force people to like interpret you how you want them to, and that's something you come to accept. And the best you can do is just try to negotiate interface with them. And even if like one of my friends was asking me how like different things about, because for instance, like take the premise of Christianity. If Christianity is true or something, and you have gay sex or whatever, then like you're doing wrong in God's eyes, and that'll cost you. So you can say, therefore, we should decrease encouraging gay behavior or gay actions or whatever, gay sex or whatever. But then I also think of it as like this is something I'm so wrestling with. I haven't fully thought through, but it's just like there's a way in which a system can become very resilient to the point, or when you live in a system that you can form a membrane in. Like if you take it, like take an ecology, you have an ecology, you can have different organisms. So the organism has a particular set of boundaries. It has a permeable boundary for what to keep out, what to keep in. So that particular organism is the Christian body or whatever. So in the Christian body, this what you take in for the preservation and the development of what a Christian is. But on the outside, you have to interface with it in such a way that you may not consume it or you may not attack it, but you will not validate it. You will not condone it or whatever. And I think you could take that because it's like there's a way in which the ecology, if the ecology is strong, it becomes like I think Kelly put it as like a prince can tolerate rebellion.
Yeah,
it can tolerate revolution because it's strong enough. The state is strong enough to be able to create that opposite. Sometimes the prince will even create their own opposite. It's like I'll create a challenge for myself. Like take like what God did with the devil and Job. It's like okay, sure, like challenge me, be the Satan, whatever, be my enemy, be my opposition, be my accuser, accuse them and stuff like that. So there's a way in which greater power allows conflict. It's weakness that tries to tyrannize, if you think about it.
Yeah.
But greater power tends to be more generous. It tends to like pour out and also contain. It's like a womb.
Right.
So there's a way in which there's a way in which if our society, as abstract as it sounds, can't even if like suppose like this whole country everyone was Christian, but there are still people who were trans or gay or whatever. If we can't, I'm not saying I don't know how to put this because it's like there's a sense of like we should still care about them. We should still like if they're sick, we take care of them. We feed them, we encourage them. We're just like maybe you don't interpret yourself as like you're in the wrong or that you're doing bad or you don't even believe in God or whatever. But it's just like there's still a way in which we can interface with them. We can live with them. So, and that's what I'm about, where it's like, how do I get people who have completely different ways of experiencing themselves, experiencing each other, experiencing the world, to interface and negotiate and compete and cooperate with each other, or maybe even live away from each other sometimes without trying to like exploit each other. And that's usually where my natural strategy is towards. Like I'm not, because it's like, if you try to unite everyone, what are you uniting them under? What principle? What headship? Like one of my friends, he's an ENFJ, and he's always talking about, I want to unite the world and under Jesus Christ and God the Father. I'm just like, good luck with that. That's God's plan, but it's like he knows that's not going to work. He's not going to unite everyone. He's selecting, and he's going to separate the wheat from the tares. So it's one of those things. So it's a very complex topic, and these are things I'm constantly wrestling with, trying to figure out. Because it's like you're dealing with, because it's difficult. Because it's like there's a way in which if you license or validate, like depending on what existential game we're playing, if we're playing a Christian game, if you validate or license like gay sex or whatever, then people come to imitate that, or people come to think that's okay. Then you're basically screwing a bunch of people over.
It's like if you do the thing that's like, oh, if you do you, I'm gonna do me.
Yeah.
On the outside, it seems fine.
Yeah.
It seems like the moral way to do it, but like give it like a few generations, and then they come to teach your kids about. Yeah. Like a trans woman is coming to read your children some books, and you're gonna find some problems. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. It's a very interesting process because it's just we're like to draw a line or not draw a line, Yeah. You're gonna create enemies either way. Yeah, you are. You're gonna create enemies either way. Like there are ways in which your enemy will either try to have power over you or some sort of like greater value over you based on what they value. Whether they're like, well, you're an oppressor because you're stronger than me and you misuse that strength. You don't use that strength to my advantage or whatever. Right. Or you're
a weakling and you're trying to exploit me. You're just trying to take from me. You're just trying to eat me. You're a parasite. Or, you know, like there are different ways like people interpret those they consider different from them, or those who they consider their opposition because they're different or because they're similar. Because you can hate people because they're similar to you. Because you maybe like we're similar and I want to be different. I want to be unique. So I hate you because we're so similar. Or maybe I hate you because I hate things about myself. So there's different ways we can get conflicts. It's just one of those things. So it's just one of those things. And I want people to have this conversation better, because it's like I feel like people don't understand that we're running different algorithms and playing different realities. And like certain like Nazis, whatever, all of them, everyone is playing their story. They're playing their game. And you just have to like figure out like which game is best, which value is best, and how do you interpret the idea of the whole situation of like, how do you evaluate, how do you interpret, how do you narrate? Because I feel like people kind of have underhanded ways of telling each other they're wrong, while I just kind of like follow things more logically of like, if this is true and this excludes this, it excludes it. So it's just like, it's just one of those things. So I'm just like, when people don't want you to say that, because they want to be able to say you're wrong without them feeling like they're challenging you, because they don't want that opposition. Sometimes it's like that, because they feel too weak to like actually take a challenge, or they want to tyrannize over you, so they won't feel challenged at all. So it's difficult. No, we should probably end this, right? All right, everyone, thanks for listening. It's a difficult conversation. Talk about all sorts of different things, and yeah, like my main principle is honestly just seek to care for others. Even like it's a very Christian principle too, of like love your enemies. You know, like love those who want to destroy you, love those who oppose you, who try to thwart you, and stuff like that. And but of course, it doesn't mean like let yourself be destroyed by them. If you have to fight, they're still your enemies. If you have to fight them, you have to fight them. You know, and if you can negotiate, maybe negotiate, or maybe leverage things strategically in a way that benefits you. So, hey, like if whoever is against me, from where I am, the space I'm presenting myself in, then do so, but do it in a smart way. I'll admire that more. You know, test my words, or be honest too. Like or unless dishonesty kind of furthers your agenda or something, and whatever, and you don't get caught. That's the key. Yeah, be smart about it. So just want to know, but I don't mean to do wrong by anyone. Just trying to get through this life. I'm trying to do what helps people. Like I have gay friends who I feel their pain, and it's difficult, because it's like, because that's what I think of it as like, imagine if for some weird reason, like we were supposed to reproduce by putting our eggs and sperm in a tube or whatever, but like heterosexual sex was like not a thing. It's like that's an abomination of God. Imagine God made us that way. It's like you're supposed to come into a plate, and then they come into a plate, and you put them together, and then it develops or something, or whatever. Like if we're that kind of creature, but it's like we like putting ourselves with each other or something. Do you see what I mean? So it's like I can always think of a scenario. It's like that'd be crazy, It's like, but I want her. Yeah. It's like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I love her, whatever. Or like, I want to be with them and have like all these other dimensions and operations of like interaction to come into the picture too, come into my story. So I'm aware of that. Like I keep track of all these things. It's like, it's just, life is, people talk about life's unfair, but it's like, it has to be unfair for it to be, for you to have something constructive.
Yeah.
Like every construction, every growth, every progression is a selection out of a largeness, like a part out of a whole, a ratio, rationality, or a preference, a selection, and so forth. So it's just like either way, somebody will be losing. Either way, somebody will be excluded. So it's just like you can still take care of them, like take up like the lepers, like in the Bible, like when people have leprosy, they have to, I think I remember they had to go outside the camp.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you wouldn't feed them.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's just like maybe if Christians become excluded or whatever, then it's just like, and they're cruel to us, or maybe they decide to take care of us, but they'll shut us down or something. It's just life at the end of the day. Anyway, I'm talking. It's hard to like whatever. I gotta end this now. Anyway, thanks for listening, y'all. Bye bye.